The beginning of the story took place in the middle of the forest, near a beautiful, transparent, and thin stream. There was a white-haired guy sitting right by the lake who wanted to have fun. At the same time, another guy, in the same forest, was watching the Qinluan mountains. He was wondering if his destiny in the celestial sect of this mountain was true. Suddenly, a voice came from his ring. He said that his destiny really lay in these mountains. Soon there will be a ceremony for accepting new adherents in that sect. The voice said that the guy will understand when his time comes. As soon as this guy reached the lake, he immediately began to praise it for its purity and beauty. Suddenly he noticed that his pet was somehow acting restless. Suddenly he noticed that there was another pet in the sky. He didn't look very friendly. A cry was heard from the bushes for Xiao to calm down and go down to the ground, but he did not listen. The girl didn't understand what was going on, because just a second ago he was drinking water and suddenly went crazy. It was a girl from the sect of Celestials named Lu. But when she ran towards her pet, she tripped and fell. And when she wanted to get up, that white-haired guy was already standing in front of her, looking at her with an obscene look. He said that the pet behaves so unpredictably because it has already managed to drive him crazy. After which he threw her to the ground and said that it was only the two of them in this forest. And then he added that she should be an obedient girl and allow her mentor brother to passionately love her. Suddenly, someone who was also in the forest ordered the guy to let the innocent girl go. After which, air was shot at the guy was immediately thrown several meters away. It turned out that it was the dark-haired guy with the pet who was looking for the way to the mountains. He told the girl not to worry anymore, because he had come to help her. The girl turned around and saw that her pet had been attacked by another pet. But the guy said that there was no need to worry, because his pet was helping him calm down the other one. After these words, the guy pointed his sword at the blonde pervert. He didn't understand how he dared to attack an innocent girl in broad daylight, but he was a little surprised, because such immorality does not suit the face of this young man. The blonde asked who he was and how dare he spoil his idea, because he was a great disciple of the celestial sect, after which he ordered the other guy to say his name. The dark-haired guy, in turn, confidently answered that, unlike him, he does not hide behind someone else's name and said that his name is Jimmy. It turned out that he was the heir of the Northern River, the great Zhou dynasty. After the blonde found out who Jimmy was, he began to laugh out loud, because his entire family was killed and the empress was looking for him. Had he really come to seek refuge? He told him to kneel before him and lick his shoes, and then maybe he would spare him and let him sweep up after the adepts. The guy asked him to repeat it again, because he didn't hear what he said. After which he immediately told him not to dare to insult him and to prepare for an attack. But the blonde didn't even move. On the contrary, he seemed to be glad that everything was happening, like in fanfiction. In a past life, this guy's name was Lucas. He was an ordinary student who loved reading fanfiction more than anything else. That day he was reading one of the oldest fanfictions, featuring Marty Sue. When he was reading this fanfic called Great Overlord, he strangely passed out. When he woke up, he transferred into the villain from the Great Overlord, into the great disciple of the celestial sect named Marcus. After which it turned out that he had a system of a lazy villain who needs to follow the plot of this fanfic. According to the system, he needs to play according to the plot, and then after death he will be able to become a celestial and walk through 100 worlds. Having received the abilities, he will be able to return back to the Blue Star to his family. Of course, now Marcus cannot die. According to the plot, the main character Jimmy only wounds him, after which the fourth sister will fall in love with Jimmy. The guy was spinning a plot in his head according to which he needed to act like a villain. And so, with a smile on his face, he waited for Jimmy to injure him so that the main plot of this fanfic would start. But suddenly, his fourth mentor sister appears in front of Marcus and repels Jimmy's attack. The guy looked at everything that was happening and clearly did not expect such a turn of events. Lou hit him hard enough to send Jimmy flying and crashing into a tree. Immediately after this, the sister asked her brother if he was okay. She asked where they left off, because she wanted to continue what she started. But they didn't succeed because of this freak, who came from nowhere and disrupted their plans. The guy was still in shock, because according to the plot, this shouldn't have happened had the storyline really been changed. After thinking, Lou said that now the most important thing for them is to kill that guy. From what Marcus heard, he began to worry a lot. Lou said that since Jimmy dared to touch his mentor brother, she of course had to kill him. Marcus began to incredibly panic. Was his sister really going to kill the main character? The plot was getting out of control. But his salvation was his pet, who grabbed him and lifted him into the sky. He urgently began to call the system. He hoped that it should explain to him what happened Lou. But it turned out that the system was being updated, so he couldn't open it now. He should try later. Turning around, he sought his sister mentor, who suggested that he continue what he had started. Marcus immediately began to make excuses, saying that it would soon rain for the hike, and he did not have clothes for this, so he needed to go. The main thing for him was that in this scene he said all his lines, after which he said that if he had stayed, he would have deviated from the plot. Her pet is out of control, her brother is acting strangely, and that guy, the girl, was embarrassed that all this happened to her in one day. And then Marcus woke up with cold sweat on his face. He had some kind of nightmare. He dreamed that he died, and this dream was so realistic that it scared him. But he reassured himself that his death had been predetermined by the author a long time ago, so this could not have happened at another time. Marcus said that in this world he has 3 younger sisters and 1 beautiful teacher. But unfortunately he is not the main character. The main character is Jimmy, who was the chosen son but was unlucky. Marcus thought a lot about why the system failed and everything didn't go according to the plot. But all his thoughts were interrupted by a knock on his door. The one who stood outside the door said that today he had to report to the master. A girl named Chris wanted to help Marcus with his morning ablutions. The guy believed that people like her were an ideal pawn for someone like him. After which Chris said that today the older brother looks more irresistible than ever, but he was sorry, because with such an appearance, he became just a villain. He headed to the mountain where the master lives, but it was quite far away, but this did not bother Marcus. When Marcus was about to leave, Chris handed him a sword, telling him to be careful, and so he set off. Chris wished him good luck on his journey. At that moment, the only thing on his mind was why the 4th sister's character was damaged. Suddenly, Marcus heard ridicule in his direction with the words that the eldest disciple of the sect was not even capable of flying with a sword. It was Ariel's younger sister. She said that even beginners are capable of this. Doesn't he really feel sorry for spending their sex funds on building a cable car? Sister Lou supported her younger sister and said that with this money they could buy meat and feed it to her cat. And Sister Vanessa said that with this money they could buy a new lute. He finally recognizes familiar lines. Even the 4th sister's character has returned to normal. In response to them, he said that the school's finances were managed by the student elders, and he could spend his time as he wished. And then he added that if the elder sister came to her brother's chambers that night, he could find some coins for her cultivation. Ariel said that because of their master's kindness, he became too arrogant, but as soon as he returned from his training, Marcus would be in big trouble. But Marcus, on the contrary, liked that everything had finally returned to normal and was going exactly according to the script. And so the 4 of them came to a waterfall. They called this area the Valley of 1,000 Flowers. As soon as Marcus started to say something, Ariel interrupted him and said that all the students were diligently improving their level, and Ariel herself had already reached the natural level. Lou and Vanessa also said that they had already reached the natural level. In addition, all the spirit beasts had also reached the same level. Marcus said that he agreed with his younger sister's words, but as for his cultivation level, he is still at the foundation level. Right after that, Ariel remembered that there was something else she wanted to say. The disciple acceptance ceremony would soon be held to refresh their sect. Phoenix Peak received 281 applications. One of them was from Jimmy, the eldest son in the Great Zhou dynasty. If this talent can pass the test, it will be true redemption for the past student who was unable to take on such responsibility. And finally the system was updated. Marcus immediately asked her to tell her what the current status of the plot was. The system replied that everything was in order with the plot. Marcus was happy, because in this case, yesterday's incident was a simple accident. The protagonist is approaching the top and the villain's death is just around the corner. After completing this task he will be able to go home. Suddenly, heavenly memories came flooding back to Lou, where the plot at that moment was supposed to turn against Marcus. The plot where his sister Lou fell in love with Jimmy and took his side. But the only thing Marcus asked her to do at that moment was to stay away from this man. After these words, Jimmy asked Lou who she loved the most, to which Lou replied that, of course, she loved him the most. After some time, a huge tragedy occurred on the territory of Qinglan Peak. Unknown demons destroyed everything around and killed absolutely everyone in their path. Lou was on her knees and crying. She didn't understand. Why did Jimmy lie to her? What did she do? It turned out that 2 days ago she saw an incomprehensible fragment of memories. Lou had a feeling as if it was a warning, and not just a vision of the future. She didn't understand why she fell in love with such a bastard, what happened to the sect, and what her older brother did. She promised herself that she would make every effort to find out everything about it. Meanwhile, people brought justice to Jimmy's pet, who ate people's watermelons. They found it only thanks to an artifact that was given to them by the venerable, immortal school of Qinglan. This man immediately went to report to Marcus. He said that they had caught that creature. Marcus asked if his watermelons were well ripened. The man replied that they were well ripe, in which case Marcus would take his field under his wing. Having stepped on the head of Jimmy's pet, Marcus said that he still had not settled with his owner. After all, he ruined one thing for him, but since he was so lucky, and the pet ended up in his hands, he took his time to have fun with it. After which he began to shove watermelons into his mouth. saying that he liked watermelons. Suddenly, behind him, he heard an ordering tone for him to stop. It was Jimmy. He ordered Marcus to let his sable go. Marcus was even glad that he came on time. The enraged man asked if this animal was his. If the venerable immortal had not intervened, this creature would have gnawed all the watermelons in his field. He demanded compensation. But Jimmy didn't understand what kind of compensation they were talking about, because all they did was mock his sacred animal. In this case, Jimmy should not yet have forgotten who Marcus is. He is the eldest disciple of the Phoenix Peak bloodline, the Qinglan school. What right does he even have to develop his mouth in his presence? If he still hopes to join Qinglan and receive their protection, Marcus expects material compensation and a sincere apology from him. Immediately after hearing this, Jimmy took out his sword and began to attack Marcus, saying that no one had the right to offend his pet. The radius of Jimmy's explosive attack was several meters. When the smoke cleared, he saw that Marcus was completely fine, just sitting on the ground, and then he immediately got up and ran away, saying that he would still get what he deserved. Marcus was very happy. Everything went even too smoothly. Now the distance to his deadly finale was reduced by one more step. After that, he received some random rewards, such as a health elixir or an improvement in technology, but Marcus did not understand why he received them. At that time, some sage told Jimmy that he was too impulsive, because that person had a fairly high position in the Qinglan school. The sage was worried that Jimmy was making problems for himself and would make it harder for himself to pass tomorrow's test. In response, Jimmy said that he may have lost his noble position, but he would never tolerate humiliation towards himself and his loved ones. The spirit was surprised that at such a young age the boy had such a character. It seems that it was not in vain that he chose him. At that time, the angry man apologized to Jimmy and asked him to be generous. Without listening to another word, Jimmy swung his hand and immediately hit him. After such a blow, the man flew several meters and hit the buildings behind him. Jimmy said that he himself is not the most holy man. He led a rather dissolute life without any conventions, but what he never tolerated was bullying from his family and friends. Seeing all this, people who were not far from Jimmy began to ask him for forgiveness, and then beg for mercy. But Jimmy said that they had no need to be afraid, because he clearly distinguishes between good and evil and never kills innocents. Lou watched all this. She did not understand what she saw in him from those memories, and even more so, why she could love him. She believed that compared to him, even her older mentor brother was better. But the way he ran away, an innocent uncle suffered because of him, so she needs to find out if everything is okay with him. Literally a moment later she abandoned this idea, because she saw that her older brother had returned. He apologized to the man and offered an elixir of health as an apology, which he received as a reward. Lou said that every day it becomes more and more difficult for her to understand what her older brother is really like. But be that as it may, she said that she should not allow Jimmy to enter Qinglan school, but the entrance test will take place tomorrow. And now the people who came to take the qualifying test were already facing the test itself. Ariel said that whoever fails even this test can immediately return home, because Qinglan school does not need scum. Some people didn't even know who she was because those who knew had to explain that she was the second disciple of Phoenix Peak. And some respected her very much and knew that she was the only descendant of the strongest, as legends say, family of cultivators of the fencing arts. Jimmy confirmed her words and also said that if someone was scared already at the first test, then he shouldn't have come here and embarrassed himself. One of the guys was displeased and indignant, but the second one calmed him down, saying that this guy was strong enough and should not be messed with. Jimmy bowed down in front of Ariel and said that he had heard a lot about her, after which he introduced himself. After thinking a little, Ariel reciprocated his feelings. Jimmy said that his venerable master was right and the Qinglan school was indeed the place with which his destiny was connected. The master said that, looking at this girl, spring comes in Jimmy's soul. In response, Jimmy only said that he just wanted them to hone their fencing skills together. Jimmy said that he had heard that the sister instructor had very deep knowledge of the art of the sword, and he just has problems in this area, so I would like to ask her for personal guidance. And then Marcus appeared. He said that the exam hadn't even started yet, and he was already sucking up to the examiner. What's the point? Jimmy replied that even though he had met his sister mentor for the first time, he felt as if he had known her for many years, which is why he wanted to talk to her about fencing techniques. Marcus asked if this pathetic little man really dared to bribe the examiner in this way, moreover, how he dared to discuss fencing with his sister. Nimming at Marcus, Jimmy even wondered if there were those here who had entered the school of immortals using dirty methods or tricks. Immediately after these words, Chris shouted that her older brother was simply hiding his true strength, otherwise he would have already collected his teeth throughout the school. She asked him who he was to discuss her brother, and for the record, he also holds the highest record on the ascension ladder. Despite the fact that this highest record was the result of one wonderful misunderstanding, he was of little interest in this, because this is an excellent opportunity to show off. After hearing Chris's remarks, the rest of the students thought that if this was true, then this place was truly amazing. In this case, Jimmy is now doubly curious about how he did it, and then asks if he would share his wisdom. Marcus replied that everything was extremely simple, he just needed to go upstairs. Ariel could not stand it and said that the Qinglan school exams are always fair and there was never room for even the slightest tricks. The master told him that he was too harsh, but he reacted to everything and there was no need to once again offend the person who disliked him from the very beginning. The guy replied that it didn't matter to him what tricks Marcus used, he would rely only on his strength. Jimmy said that only thanks to her would he be able to beat his record in today's test. Ariel said that using weapons is strictly prohibited, they can only rely on their spiritual power, if they cheat, they will be disqualified forever. Those who rise to the top will be able to take part in the ceremony of recruiting students, but those who want to rise above the golden steps can try to set a new record. After which Ariel wished them all good luck and said that the strongest will win this test. From that moment on, the test officially began, all participants immediately rushed to run up. After some time, some people could no longer cope with the spiritual pressure and could not go further, but they could not give up because they had already gone too far. As soon as they raised their heads, they saw Jimmy running upstairs full of strength. They did not understand how this was possible and called him a monster. For Jimmy himself, such spiritual pressure was just another trifle on his way. Mentally, he told everyone to watch him, because today he will not only walk to the top via the climbing ladder, but he would also walk with his feet named Marcus. He hoped that after this, his sister mentor would take a liking to him. Marcus said that in the original story, he was jealous of Jimmy's talent, and therefore special prevented him from testing the climbing ladder. But with all this, Jimmy even managed to break the previous record, thereby gaining great popularity at Qinglan School. Therefore, he should not deviate from the true plot, and should interfere with it along the way on the ladder of ascension. After which he took the stone in his hands and, taking aim, threw it at Jimmy. Turning around, Jimmy noticed that a stone was flying in his direction, and, fortunately, he managed to dodge, but the stone hit the guy who was running in front of him, after which he fell down. Ariel could not stand it and said that the tests at Qinglan School must be carried out fairly, unreasonable interference could hit part of the school. In response, Marcus said that his hand just randomly twitched. Smiling, he said that he had only one dirty trick left to do. After throwing the rock a second time, Jimmy catches it and sends it back, hitting Marcus square in the face. After which, unable to bear it, Jimmy will talk about Marcus's petty antics. The master told Jimmy not to be distracted by such trifles, because he would do it again. Jimmy replied with a smile on his face that he could handle the third-rate tricks of the scum and laying the foundations. Immediately after his first throw, Marcus shouted for everyone to look up, because there was a naked beauty floating there. Of course, the masters and Jimmy heard this and looked up, and while they were doing this, Marcus threw his second stone, but this time Jimmy caught him, saying that these were too childish tricks for him. Marcus was only happy about this, now he wanted him to throw the stone back at him, but suddenly something happened and Jimmy fell down. This really shocked Marcus, because everything again went wrong. He didn't understand how this could happen. Could this really be the chosen one of fate? It turned out that Sister Lou was also watching all this. A few seconds before Jimmy fell, people were saying that he really had unusual strength. And then, suddenly, the second participant fell. People said that excessive joy turns into sad consequences. Everything really happened according to Lou's heavenly memories, so before the mentor brother throws a stone again, she needs to intervene in order to avoid problems. The chameleon is a magical beast. The stages of completing the elixir, it is capable of perfectly hiding its presence in aura, and also changing color when sensing danger. The day before, Lou left this chameleon on the stairs of the ascent, all for this moment. While Jimmy was climbing up, the chameleon tied his legs with its tongue. As expected, Lou's plan worked and Jimmy began to fall. This made him very angry. Jimmy swore that he would never lose. As Jimmy fell, he grabbed the leg of one of the participants and thereby stayed on the stairs. But the guy he grabbed immediately started screaming for the examiner to take some action, because he thought it was cheating. Jimmy said that he did not use any weapon or artifact, and only used his spiritual energy, so there were no violations. Ariel confirmed his words. She said that no violations were found. The guy said that the world is merciless towards those who do not think about their own good, and besides, the number of people who can stay here is limited. Instead of criticizing others, you need to worry about yourself. And finally Jimmy reached the golden steps, which meant that he finished first. Seeing his result, the rest of the participants also began to try to get into at least 100 of those who passed. Marcus said that there was complete madness going on here, but that was to be expected from the old Marisush novel, or the principle that the strong devours the weak works. Chris didn't like Jimmy at all. she asked if they would seriously take him to their school if he passed the enrollment stage. In response, Marcus said that the examiner did not disqualify him, and this proves that he did not break the rules. The only thing that made Marcus happy was that the final result of the scenario remained unchanged. All that remained was to see how Jimmy would beat his record. Lou said that Jimmy was truly a constant scoundrel. With such success because of him, the trials would turn into complete chaos. They needed to stop him somehow. Jimmy has almost reached the very top to beat Marcus' record. And finally, when he got to the very top, he said that he would walk by the name of Marcus with his feet. Chris was shocked because her big brother mentor's highest record had been broken. Standing at the top, Jimmy felt the full taste of victory. The fact that he trampled on Marcus's record made him even more pleased. But Jimmy definitely didn't expect that a stone would fly at him again, only this time enhanced by magic. Lou wondered what happened, why he fell again. She didn't do anything. Marcus began to get nervous again. Who dared to do such a thing this time? Saying that he was truly unworthy to join their school, Ariel launched the stone at him. It turned out that Ariel also saw the same memories as Lou. She said that a person who despises morality and discipline should not join their school in the first place. After which she turned to her brother and asked if he was of the same opinion as she was. Marcus replied that her words made sense, after which he mentally added, shouldn't she, on the contrary, help Jimmy? Ariel said that if her memories were truly true, then she could not allow this person to join their school. When Jimmy was figuring things out at the top for the third time, the spirit of the master supported him and told him not to dare to give up. Due to the fact that Jimmy had little strength, he again tried to grab onto one of the participants, thereby rising up at least a little. But when the contestant saw him trying to grab onto him again, he kicked him and Jimmy went flying down again. Jimmy was very angry. Could he really fail in such an easy test? He said that he would never give up, because his revenge had not yet been accomplished. Suddenly, as Jimmy was flying down, he was enveloped in green energy. He will be able to use his abilities unnoticed by the formation only once, but it will be very difficult to do this, because so many people are watching. He said that he would never suffer today's defeat, by any means, but he would end up in this rotten school. Jimmy asked the master to help him, because now everything directly depends only on him. The master said that he would help him, but he should not miss this opportunity. When Marcus looked at his sister Ariel, he saw how angry she was looking at Jimmy, but he couldn't let her interfere with the plot. She shouldn't prevent the main character from winning. Whatever she plans, Marcus must intervene. Unexpectedly for everyone, Marcus walked up to Ariel and hugged her right in front of everyone. But he didn't understand how to explain this act. It wasn't just that he picked her up and hugged her right in front of people. He asked her to stop, because it was unsafe to continue. There were too many eyes on the test. People did not like this revelation that they showed right in the middle of the test. A moment later, Ariel grabbed Marcus by the clothes and threw him to the ground. Confused, Ariel asked him why he did this. In response, she heard that she did not need to do such things and it was better to leave the dirty tricks to him. Ariel thought that her brother was worried that no one would see her act. Was this really his way of trying to protect her reputation? Marcus mentally said that it was his task to confront the protagonist, so she should not interfere with his plans. But while they were talking, something happened behind them, something that caused a strong reaction among people. When they turned around, they saw that Jimmy had reached the very top. Ariel said that everything happened according to her memories, and besides, he was able to break his mentor brother's record. Undoubtedly he has an ace up his sleeve. Marcus was overjoyed that finally, despite such a difficult course of events, Jimmy reached the finish line. Jimmy shouted from the very top to Marcus and said what a humiliation for today. Meanwhile, the action took place in the Valley of 1,000 Flowers in the territory of the Immortal Grotto. Ariel came to the main hall at Qinglan School to report on how the Ascension Ladder tests went. She responded that out of 356, only 100 participants passed, more than 100 were seriously injured, and more than 50 were disqualified. In the past, there have never been so many people who got hurt or broke the rules, but this time everything changed because of a guy named Jimmy. Indeed, wherever this guy went, there would be chaos, but the Ascension Ladder formation did not react to him, which meant that he was not using cheating. Ariel said that according to her observations, this man is aggressive and arrogant, and his thoughts cannot be called honest. Some of the masters believed that his moral qualities did not suit them at school, because for them it is very important what kind of character a person has. Someone thought that this guy was strong enough to be accepted and such a talent as he should never be rejected. And someone said that without a sense of competition, students cannot make good progress. Ultimately, they all decided that the guy should take part in tomorrow's ceremony. But Ariel feared that accepting Jimmy would mark an unfortunate turning point for their school. The next day, Marcus arrived at the Elixir Low Tide Pavilion, where he was greeted by a large crowd of people. They wanted to hear some teachings from him. He turned up his nose and said some stupid quote that suits his image in this world so much. The guy again received random rewards for successfully recreating the character, but this time the rewards were quite generous. He begged the system to stop giving him such awards, because at this rate it would get to the point where the weakling villain would be able to kill Jimmy, and then he himself would become the main character. But he also thought that being the main character wouldn't be such a bad thing because he would get a lot more attention. After which he abruptly changed his mind and said that if this happened, then in this case he would not be able to complete the script and return home. But at the moment, the most important thing for him was to steal the elixir, which he needed for tomorrow's episode. He sneaked quietly through the corridors so that no one would notice him. So far, everything was going according to the script, which meant that, before he had time to formulate a thought, he was interrupted. Besides him, there was someone else in this building. It was Sister Ariel who exposed his attempt to steal the poison. He immediately began to make excuses, saying that every time he looks at her, one expression comes to mind. Once again he said a stupid phrase, something like, "The ocean contains hundreds of rivers, and the human soul contains even more." He expected that after these words, Ariel would cover him with insults and that he should be ashamed that he bears the title of the head disciple of Phoenix Peak. But unexpectedly for him, she asked if he really thought so, after which she added that if he had to compare her and the rest of the sisters, which one would he like? Something went wrong again. Her reaction should not have been like this. Again everything went wrong. And after all this, like a true idiot, he began to reveal his true plans that he needed one elixir from this building for his plans. Extending her hand, Ariel asked if this was the elixir her older brother was talking about by chance. Marcus was surprised that she realized so quickly that he needed this particular elixir. He praised her for the fact that she still knows how to show tact, after which he snatched the elixir from her hands. Marcus said that this is a pretty good elixir of the family of absolutes. He is going to use it against one person he hates. After which he said that he behaved painfully unnaturally and Ariel should probably have suspicions. But she was only pleasantly surprised that her brother was so cute, and Ariel also didn't understand how she could not have noticed this before. Thanks to her memories, she now knows her brother's true identity, and she also knows the events that will happen in the future. She said that her brother can rest easy, because she worked hard on this elixir, so this time it will never fail. Meanwhile, the action took place in the Valley of 1,000 Flowers, in the territory of the Immortal Grottos. It was the leader of Phoenix Peak, Jane, also known as the finest cultivator in the eastern region. He has a free and laid-back character, also likes to drink and sometimes displays narcissistic traits in relation to his appearance. She is domineering and unwavering towards outsiders, but shows unusual care and attentiveness to her students. Even though Marcus was a piece of trash with no knowledge or ability, that wasn't a reason for Jane to give up on him. Taking advantage of the fact that the master had not yet come out of seclusion, Marcus, blinded by lust, stole the ice silk stockings belonging to the master and hid them in the pocket of his pants. But the next day, during a fight with Jimmy, the sable boy, the protagonist's spiritual beast, pulled them out into the world. Everyone present was in complete shock and bewilderment, and Marcus covered himself with eternal shame, after which Jane locked him up for 3 years. After which Jane watched over and over again as Jimmy crushed Marcus and, completely disappointed in him, destroyed the root of his spirit with her own hands, making him a mere mortal. Being a negative character, Marcus really did not change for the better. He even decided to steal the stockings of the master who raised and educated him. But after the completion of this plot scene, the movement of the villain Marcus towards a tragic ending will become inevitable. It turns out that he came to his master's chamber. He did not understand what happened there, because all his clothes were scattered on the floor. He knew that the master would discover the loss of his stockings only during the ceremony for accepting students, so now under no circumstances should he leave traces. But something was wrong. Marcus couldn't find his master's stockings anywhere. He thought that the system had incorrectly indicated the day of the stocking theft scenario, but the system itself stated that it was today. After which he put on glasses and seemed to begin to think better. For him it no longer seemed such a big problem. Since the master really likes to drink, and after going into seclusion, alcohol will not be available to her. On the last day she probably got very drunk, after which she sweated and went to take a bath. On the way to the bath, she took off one item of clothing one by one, starting with the dress. Most likely she finished with stockings last. In this case, her stockings should be right in front of the bathtub. Now the distance to the deadly finale has shortened one more step, and tomorrow at the ceremony for accepting students, there will be a wonderful moment when the villain successfully gets punched in the face. After Marcus successfully stole the stockings from the master, he immediately left her chamber. Of course, the master saw all this, but did nothing because she also gained those memories, because she knew that he would come and steal her stockings. She thought about the possibility that those memories might be true. The master approached Jimmy and gave him the formless essence of the sword. From that very moment they became one. But the only thing Marcus asked as he died was to believe him before it's too late. She didn't understand when it could come to this, whether she had made a mistake with her choice. How could she, Jane, bow her head before him, and besides, yield the formless essence of the sword? She was also interested in who this scoundrel named Jimmy was. Besides, she was wondering what role her student, Marcus, was playing in all of this. She was even a little amused by this whole safe situation. But since she knows about many things thanks to memories, she will not allow them to become reality. The next day, when Jimmy was walking around the Qinglan school grounds, he heard some guys talking about him. They said that he won the ascension ladder in a sneaky way. In order to win, he threw other players, and one of them turned out to be this guy's brother. In response to this, Jimmy said that no one could be in his place without pushing others over, so they don't even have the right to tell him all this. And then Marcus intervened. He said that if he is such a vile person, why doesn't he join some dark sect, because it's not a fact that there will be a place for him in their school. He immediately began to answer him with rudeness and say that the only scoundrel here is Marcus. But the spirit of his master said that he should not provoke Marcus, because in fact Jimmy was on his territory. Even Ariel herself watched all these events from the sidelines, because, as in her memory, they actually collided before the ceremony began. And Ariel understood that tragic fate must be destroyed from its very inception. Jimmy started asking Marcus similar, provocative questions about whether he really wanted to take it out on him for breaking his climbing ladder record. Listening to all this, Ariel said that if even one action of this freak crossed the line, she would immediately break his legs so that he would not get to the ceremony. Marcus replied that he really thought that the shameful scene with which he broke his record was a reason for pride. Did he really think it was cool? Then he added that since the founding of the school, Jimmy was the first person who, when climbing the stairs, showed himself in such a manner, most likely he would not even have an equal. Marcus tossed him a memory stone and told him to pick it up and make it a family heirloom to immortalize his noble deed. But instead of picking it up, Jimmy hit it with his fist out of anger, as a result of which the stone seemed to evaporate. Ariel knew that Jimmy had shown great disrespect for his older brother, but the problem was that his brother had started to provoke him first, so it would be difficult to intervene. But the master did not allow her to intervene, who praised Marcus for not losing his fortitude in such a situation. The master told Ariel not to be too surprised, because they needed to continue watching the guys. Jimmy said that he only knows how to demonstrate his courage in words. If he does not have a small intestine, then he would like to determine once and for all which of them is better. But Marcus was planning to finally drop it tomorrow, and then he suddenly asks to receive it in advance. Is he really that stupid? In response, Jimmy asked to spare him this chatter and said that in this case, Marcus should prepare for the fact that Jimmy would not stand on ceremony with him. Ariel began to worry, because if her older brother is beaten now, after so many provocations, he will forever become a universal laughingstock. Even Jane herself said that she should have broken Jimmy's legs for such a disrespectful attitude. And so Marcus gave the next provocation, saying that he would give Jimmy the opportunity to hit him first. At this moment, Jimmy wondered why he was provoking him in front of everyone. Was this really a plan to prevent him from enrolling in Qinglan school? Marcus noticed that Jimmy was hesitating, so in this case he would have to act very risky. He said that it's somehow strange, Jimmy is inactive, although Marcus is just standing motionless. Does he really need his instructions on what and how to do? Immediately after these words, Jimmy shouted back at him so that he would not think that Jimmy could not reveal his vile whims. Marcus said that he was just throwing around such loud words, and now he is acting like an indecisive girl again. Was he really so scared that he wet himself and is now afraid that the slightest movement will reveal it? Taking out his sword, Jimmy said that a warrior would rather die than accept humiliation. But his master spirit told him not to follow such provocations, and he should think about his future fate. Fortunately, nothing happened. Jimmy said that the day would come when Marcus would answer for bringing such wrath upon himself. Marcus himself was looking forward to this day. She couldn't even imagine what would have happened if this blow had fallen on her brother. After this, Ariel immediately asked Jane why her brother was acting so arrogant. But in Jane's head there was only one thought: today Marcus showed himself to be incredibly brave. If he had not had problems with his innate potential, he could have become a dragon among people. In fact, Marcus was very scared, because the scenario was supposed to end after he threw the stone of memory at his feet. And so they met, and the next day, Marcus told Jimmy that he hadn't even joined their school yet. In that case, who did he think he was that he dared to cultivate on the grounds of their school? But suddenly someone protected Jimmy with magic, causing Marcus to jump a few meters back from him. It turned out that it was his sister, Vanessa. She asked her brother to stop, because he was already crossing all boundaries, and besides, sooner or later, Jimmy would enter their school anyway. Marcus mentally said that in this novel, Jimmy was the only person for whom his cold sister Vanessa had special feelings. Based on this, he is now 100% sure that this scene will take place without any changes and everything will go according to the script. After Marcus' sister helped Jimmy, he began showering her with compliments. And he mentally said that Qingling School is truly a heavenly place where there are many beautiful people, even an ordinary walk gave him the opportunity to meet such a beauty. After which he continued to shower her with compliments with the idea that she would soon be fascinated by him. Watching everything that was happening, Marcus, just in case, covered his ears with earplugs, so as not to go deaf during his sister's musical attacks. Suddenly Jimmy felt sick and started coughing up blood. Even Marcus himself did not expect such an outcome. After which the spirit of his master warned Jimmy to be careful, because there was murderous intent hidden in the sounds of this girl's music. She said that no one dares to disturb her when she is practicing playing the qin. She hoped that Jimmy had a sense of tact, but apparently she was mistaken. Jimmy immediately apologized to his older sister mentor, after which he added that it was not his original intention to interfere with her practice. Marcus did not know how to act, what to do after the conflict between the main characters. He realized that he needed to help Jimmy restore his reputation in the eyes of his sister. And then they heard the voice of Marcus, who said that he had finally found the one who had been pestering his sister all the time. But when he saw Jimmy there, he said that he didn't even dare to fight with him and immediately switched to the girls. Apparently he doesn't change himself at all. In response, Jimmy began to blame him for the fact that it was Marcus who turned his sister against him. But in his defense, Marcus said that he did not expect to see him here, and besides, he came here only to punish the one who pesters his sister all the time. Jimmy began to shout back at him with displeasure, saying that he had deliberately persuaded his sister to do such an unfair and bad act. She herself would never have done such a thing. Marcus asked if he had really become so bold that he began to talk and threaten him so boldly. Jimmy replied that even if this was the case, in any case, Marcus would not be able to oppose anything to him. At the same moment, Marcus' sister used magic and accidentally threw the two of them away, saying that he shouldn't talk to her brother like that. Immediately after this, Jimmy ran away and Marcus did not understand why the plot deviated from the truth again, but the most important thing was that he successfully completed this scene. After which Marcus stood up and immediately began to blame Jimmy for using explosives. He added that he would definitely report everything with skill. Vanessa was very alarmed, because she just wanted to stand up for her brother, but in the end she did the opposite and hurt him. Then she added that all this happened because of Jimmy. If he had not stood so close to her brother, she would not have hooked him with her magic. According to the memories of the Heavenly Tao, Jimmy was supposed to injure her brother today, but in reality everything turned out the other way around, and she personally injured him, thus changing the main scenario. But even the deviation of the script from her memories already consoled her. She was also worried about her older brother, who would most likely lose all his status and respect at tomorrow's ceremony. Therefore, to prevent this from happening, she must do something. And when Marcus came home, he began to remember what the original scene with the sable should have looked like. The actions took place exactly as at the moment when Marcus himself was present. The man swung at the sable in order to teach him a lesson. Only this time Jimmy intervened early and instead of simply stopping the man, he cut off what he was holding in his hands. After which he approached his pet and apologized for being a little late. The man asked him if he happened to be the owner of this animal. Jimmy said that he apologized, because, in truth, he did. He himself is not the most holy person and led a rather dissolute life without any conventions, but at the same time. But what he hates most is when people hurt his friends and family. He still clearly knows how to distinguish between good and evil, and never kills innocents. Meanwhile, lying on his bed, Marcus was thinking about how much of a hypocrite Jimmy was, because he punished a man because his sable spoiled that man's harvest. He could not even think that his sisters would eventually join such a person in a harem. But in the end, Marcus said that he shouldn't care about such questions, because he had to finish the story of the novel in order to eventually return home. Tomorrow the selection of students should take place and Jimmy will come to it, so Marcus will arrange to go to bed early in order to gain strength, because tomorrow he will have to receive from Jimmy. But before going to bed, he wanted to check on his sisters in order to be 100% consistent with his character. Suddenly someone knocked on his door asking if his older brother was still sleeping. He recognized from the voice that it was his sister Vanessa, but he did not understand what brought her to him in the middle of the night. In the original script, even when Marcus lost everything and was imprisoned by the main character when the other two sisters literally abandoned him, Vanessa was the only one who still asked for leniency towards him. When Jimmy disgraces him, in her eyes he will no longer be the big brother she loves so much. It will be the last time she gives him such a look. But he could not talk to her normally, like brother and sister. He had to maintain his villainous image of brother mentor. He told her to come over, and he examined her to see if she was okay, and mentally said that even if he saw such a pervert, he would immediately punch his face. Only Vanessa long ago surpassed him in movement techniques, so most likely she will evade any of his touch. But unexpectedly for him, instead of removing his hand from her, she bowed to him. Marcus could not have expected this. Well, what Marcus couldn't have expected even more was that even his sister Vanessa would change her character contrary to the script. Only now he cannot violate the image of his hero against the script. There will be some kind of punishment for this, so he will have to refuse such an attractive gift. Approaching Marcus, Vanessa asked him if he would help her with a solution to a problem. But when she approached him, she accidentally hit him with her musical instrument. Marcus said that this happened because of heavenly punishment, because only the villain dared to touch the protagonist's wife, when karma immediately overtook him. Vanessa asked him if he was okay, to which Marcus replied that he was still bleeding, so it didn't really look like he was okay. After which Vanessa took him in with her, and Marcus realized that if someone other than him took the initiative, nothing would happen to the plot. The sister said that yesterday she was practicing the technique of heavenly sounds on her instrument and accidentally damaged the string, so she would like to go down from the mountains and find a master of casting artifacts, so that he can repair her musical instrument. But she doesn't know the area well, so she would like to ask Marcus to go with her. Marcus began to doubt whether to go or not, because in the script, his sister did not approach him with a request to go to the mountains in order to repair her musical instrument. Because the next thing he said was that he, as a senior student of the school, should be present at such events, because this is already an established tradition. But Vanessa asked him to make one exception for her sake, and go with her to the mountains, instead of the ceremony. Barely able to withstand such pressure in his direction, he pushed her out the door and said that it was already late and she had better go to bed so that she would not be late for the morning class tomorrow. He understood that he still needed to stay in character, because tomorrow he still had to make sure that the main character trampled his face into the dirt. Immediately after this, Chris came to visit him. Anxiously he wondered why everyone was looking for a meeting with him today. When he asked her what happened, Chris replied that the master had come out of seclusion and ordered him to immediately meet her at the Celestial Maiden's Rock. And again he did not understand why this was happening, because this episode was not in the original script. Again everything went wrong. At that time, Vanessa watched all this and said that in this case, she needed to go find out what was going on. She said that before there was nothing more important to her than her musical instrument. This continued until the moment the events of the future arose in her mind. And then she realized that the only person who truly wished her well was Marcus, so she deliberately broke her chain to take her brother away from humiliation. Since the escape failed, Vanessa is forced to seize the initiative, because tomorrow she will never allow Jimmy to deprive his brother of his good name. And so Marcus came to the Rock of the Heavenly Virgin, after which he greeted the master. But only after that he saw that there was no one outside, only someone was inside. It was very reminiscent of the calm before the storm to him, otherwise why would she need to call him to her in the middle of the night? Suddenly, the door opened and from there an invitation was heard for Marcus to come in, but the first thing he felt was the incredible smell of alcohol from inside. Did the master really decide to have a drinking party there? She said that if he didn't come in, then his master would be very angry. However, for Marcus this was not a big surprise. Even though his master is 200 years old, she behaves like a capricious child, and this means he has not yet discovered the loss of his stockings. After he went inside, Diana immediately called him over, under the pretext of seeing if he was okay. But he hesitated for so long that the master had to forcefully pull him towards him. Apparently the master was already very drunk. After which she began to touch him. Marcus understood that tomorrow he would have to disgrace himself and get it from Jimmy. But if her touch continues to move lower, then there will be no wait for tomorrow. Their relationship as student and teacher will end today. She said that she had not seen him for only 3 months, but he had already overcome the foundations, and even his innate potential and spirit root had changed for the better. While she was praising him, Marcus was thinking that since she was drunk now, she could be easily fooled. After which she asked if Marcus had already met that heir named Jimmy. This question surprised Marcus quite well. He did not understand how she could find out about him before the necessary time. Seeing Marcus' reaction, she immediately asked to change the subject, because she didn't want to talk about this disgusting man anymore. After which she suggested doing something that would be more interesting than these boring conversations. She approached him, grabbed him by both hands and began to push him onto the bed with her. But instead of falling onto the bed, it was as if he began to teleport into another dimension. Marcus recognized this area. Most likely it was the slope of the Heavenly Maiden. While he was looking around, the master told him to hurry up and finally fight the swordmaster. But the master is at the peak of the primordial spirit and is already half a step towards deification, and besides, she is the best in the entire Qinglan school when it comes to fencing. And just as he wanted to say that he was refusing her offer, strong lightning immediately struck. After that, a cloud of energy appeared in the sky, in the middle of which was a sword. Marcus realized that this was a special fencing ability activated solely by her pure sword aspirations. It was an incredibly simple, but at the same time fast and uncompromising technique. Was this woman really going to use the flow of the sword's aspirations to absorb his life and feed it to her sword spirit? Seeing that his master was very serious, he was also forced to summon his sword. Diana said that the sparkle volume of the ball is small, the sword's aspiration is a little weak, but the prospects are promising. She said that in all the time that Marcus had been living in the mountains, this was the first time she had seen him wield a sword so skillfully. Then she added that today she would help him overcome a certain distance. The master asked if he could keep up with her speed, and then began to attack Marcus. Marcus was sure that this woman really wanted to finish him off, but even now he had to run away rather than fight so as not to lose his image as a villain. Only now, one after another, the images of the original characters deviate from the plot, and he is the only one obliged to adhere to the image of the villain. The guy ran away for quite a long time and in the end he got tired of it, and he stopped to look around. But suddenly time and space around him froze, and he himself found himself in some kind of energy ball. This was the area where the shine of the ball was controlled. Immediately after he fell into this ball, the master told him to be especially careful now. Suddenly, flowers appeared around him. The name of this technique was the grace of the will of the ball, approaching perfection. A moment later, he saw that the master was right in front of him. He was scared because he didn't understand what she was going to do to him now. Suddenly, he felt his lower body suddenly begin to hurt terribly. Lowering his head, he saw that the master had pierced him with a sword. Could the villain's fatal ending happen ahead of time? The master said that she absolutely does not care about the chosen ones of fate and cycles of rebirth. The most important thing is that her disciples must dominate and have no equal in the entire universe. While meditating, Jimmy asked what important issue he was bothering him about. The master anxiously replied that when he used the celestial mechanism wands to lift the veil of the future, he felt that the fate that was waiting for him in the Qinglan Mountains had disappeared. Only the opportunities that fate bestows cannot simply vanish into thin air, so there is only one explanation: someone intercepted them. Jimmy was incredibly angry, because he was always the one who seizes other people's opportunities. How can he accept that someone is spoiling his destiny? The master said that he should no longer go to the territory of the Qinglan school, because just yesterday, when he entered there, the celestial mechanism wands suffered global changes. But Jimmy replied that he does not harm people who do not harm him, but if someone crosses his path, then he punishes him. And for his humiliation yesterday, he will demand tenfold payment, so when he finds himself in the mountains tomorrow, he will begin to kill his offenders. At that time, all of Marcus' sisters were already ready to attack Jimmy and kill him. The future that was originally formed for the Qinglan school was tragic. The school itself collapsed and many students died. The demon who accompanied all this was glad that on that day Jimmy was not in this school, because for him this is a great chance given from above to his dark sect. He ordered his soldiers to raze this school to the ground and, moreover, not to leave anyone alive. The masters of the Qinglan school also told their students to fight without sparing their lives, because this was the only way to win. But practically none of the students could resist the demons. They surpassed them in strength and speed, so most of the students simply died. Only a couple of masters remained alive, Marcus's sisters and his teacher Diana. And so, everywhere they were surrounded by demons who told them to surrender without unnecessary resistance. The sisters kept hoping that Jimmy would come and save them all, because that's exactly what had always happened in the past. He saved them when they needed him. Only the master said that Jimmy would not come, because just recently he went to the southern region of the middle continent, so now he is far from them. The sisters did not understand how he could do this, because apparently it was he who brought the attack of the dark current on them. After which the master told them not to lose heart, even if there were only 4 of them left, but even so they must fight to the last. That's the only way they have a chance. One of the warriors said that he could not allow such beauties to just die, so they must obey him and maybe he will leave them alive. And as usually happens, the hero appears at the very last moment to save everyone. Together with the girl with whom he arrived, they merged 2 balls, due to which they increased their strength many times over. Thus, they drove away all the demons and the main one said that he would definitely take revenge on him for interfering with his plans over and over again. After that, Jimmy went up to Sister Lu and extended his hand to her, saying that although he was late, he still made it and they survived. Lu asked him if, after everything he had done, this was all he could say. He didn't understand why everyone looked at him like that, as if they hated him with all their souls. The master said that he acquired the Qinglan ritual sword, and together with that girl, he emitted a combined sword fusion technique, after which he put the dark sect to flight. Why exactly at this moment did he appear? Why everyone with whom he has ties of friendship and affection suffers? How is it that in the end, he is the one who benefits greatly and gains eternal glory? Jimmy immediately began to make excuses, saying that she understood their feelings, but now the most important thing was to continue to pursue the dark sect in order to avenge all the victims. But the master said that the only and real enemy of the Qinglan school is him, and no one else. Immediately after these words, she tried with all her strength to attack Jimmy, but in the end she couldn't cope with him and was defeated. Jimmy didn't understand why they were so fixated on what was happening. Did they really want to become his enemy? He added that his younger sister had already arrived at the foot of the Qinglan Mountains along with a huge squad of elite warriors, and as soon as he gave the order, they were ready to finish off the dark sect. Therefore, he asked them to return to his side, because only in this way could they protect themselves and take revenge for what they had done to their enemies. And suddenly, each of the girls heard a voice they had never heard before, which asked them if they wanted to start all over again. Vanessa thought that her mentor brother initially began to feud with Jimmy because he saw right through him. Ariel blamed herself for being the one who killed her brother. Lu realized that she had misunderstood her elder brother's true intentions most of the time. Teacher Diana realized that she often treated Marcus unfairly because of his weakness. The voice told them to provide him with their memories, and he will transfer them to the past. Whether they will be able to change the course of events will depend only on this time. The sisters promised that in this life they will do everything to prevent the past from repeating. They are going to kill Jimmy in order to protect their brother. At that time, Jimmy slept peacefully in the room that Qinglan School allocated to him for the period of enrollment. And so the girls began to act. Lu ordered her pet to tear this scoundrel into pieces. But flying towards the building where Jimmy was, the pet saw two magical attacks behind him. Fortunately, the pet managed to dodge the attacks and nothing happened to him. The attacks continued to fly towards the building where Jimmy was located. Only now, when they were already as close as possible to the building, they seemed to evaporate. Jimmy woke up thinking there was bad weather outside and it was just making a lot of noise. But the spirit of his master alerted the guy, telling him to wake up immediately, because there were enemies nearby. A moment later, Jimmy was already on the roof of his building, but said that he did not see anyone nearby. He asked him if he had heard from the master, because old age can make itself felt. The master replied that he was 100% sure. He said that he felt 3 fairly strong and hostile attacks in his direction. Jimmy asked if he was trying to intimidate him so that Jimmy would leave the Qinglan school grounds out of fear and not enter it. Then he added that tomorrow the ceremony for recruiting students to Qinglan school should take place. Therefore, he needed to go to bed early in order to gain strength, so he asked the master not to make noise and not to wake him up for no reason. Ariel was very surprised, because she put all her strength into this attack, but the power of the sword took it and simply disappeared. Vanessa felt the same as Ariel. She didn't understand why her sonic attacks didn't reach Jimmy when she aimed perfectly at him. But the girls did not intend to give up. They said that they would try again. Meanwhile, Jimmy's back hurt after sleeping because the mattresses on the beds were too hard. And that's when Jimmy was already walking back to the bed, but the spirit of the master told him to turn around. He turned around, but still saw only lightning behind him due to the bad weather, after which he asked the master if he had heard the story of the boy who cried wolf. But the master replied that he really saw the attacks flying at him and there was someone here besides them. Ariel was very unhappy that none of her strong enough attacks even reached Jimmy. In this case, Jimmy really is the patron of the heavenly Tao, as stated in the flashbacks. Then they will have to wait for tomorrow's ceremony and then look for opportunities to get rid of him. Not mentally, being the first student of Phoenix Peak, to commit such baseness towards the master, Jimmy publicly disgraced Marcus. Jimmy was disgusted that such a vile and low person as Marcus was among them. And when Jimmy disgraced Marcus, he went about his business, because now he had a lot of people's predisposition towards him. At that time, Marcus wanted to stab him from behind with a rather strong artifact that he had stolen. But after a successful attack, he was imprisoned in a cave for several years as punishment. Vanessa said that his brother was very lucky that Jimmy had special martial arts and left Marcus alive. After which Marcus asked what the master thought about this. Vanessa replied that the master had completely lost hope in him, and now, as compensation for his action, she was giving Jimmy the grace of the sword's will. After these words, Marcus attacked his sister, saying that under no circumstances should they approach this man. But Sister Ariel did not intend to treat Marcus in a respectful manner, so she kicked him and he flew several meters away. Has he really decided to let his hands go again? And despite his position, all he does from time to time is to do mean things, but now his antics have come to an end. Out of anger, she said that if he cared even a little about the honor of Phoenix Peak, then he should commit suicide right here and now. Ultimately, unable to bear such an attitude towards himself, he actually committed suicide. And suddenly, he woke up, but for him it looked like the most realistic dream of his life, as if it was not even a dream, but memories. Diana said that she used the grace of the sword's will, but for some reason it is he who looks tired. After which she handed him a mug with some liquid and told him to drink it, thereby celebrating the acquisition of the essence of the shapeless sword. The master said that his sword skill had experienced a deadly rise, but now in the entire Phoenix Peak, there would be no one who could surpass him in swordsmanship. According to the rules, students of the Qinglan school who have achieved good success in fencing are given the opportunity to go to the dungeon abode of the sword. Depending on the strength invested in the desire of the sword, the strength of the sword itself depends. This sword is directly related to their life. In the original, Jimmy was able to carry out a massacre in the imperial capital and take revenge on all the offenders only because he was able to acquire and awaken the essence of a shapeless sword. But now, due to huge changes in the plot, Jimmy will not be able to awaken him, and Marcus will not be able to finish this novel and return home. Now he has another huge problem. What if he doesn't calculate his strength and really kills the main character with one blow at tomorrow's ceremony? The master asked him why he still hasn't drunk what she offers him. Does he really refuse? In response, Marcus replied that if he did, it would be unethical. Diana just grinned and asked him again with misunderstanding. After all, he literally perches on her feet, and at the same time babbles something about unethicality. After which Marcus stood up from her feet and asked her for an apology, in response to which she smiled even more. But after a couple of moments, her expression changed. She wanted to ask Marcus a very important question. In response, the guy said that he would tell her about everything she needed to know. After which the master embarrassedly straightened her hair, and she began to get closer to Marcus until her head was near his ear. And then she embarrassedly asked if Marcus considered his master handsome. This question confused Marcus. He did not understand why the teacher was asking such strange questions. Questions that are more common among teenage girls. But in the end he answered her question very superficially, saying that, as a student, he could only observe her beauty. Judging by Diana's face, this answer did not suit her either, because it does not directly answer her question. Marcus really didn't want the master's character to differ from the original, as happened with his sisters. Diana asked, since he didn't think the master was so handsome, why did he steal her stockings? But without waiting for Marcus to answer, she replied that she was drunk, but she stood up very straightforward. And then she told him not to take it seriously, because she was just joking with him. After which the master's expression changed again. Diana said that he had to promise her something. Marcus replied that as her student, he would fulfill her every request. The master replied that as Phoenix Peak's first disciple, it was his responsibility to finish Jimmy off. She said that she would take on any consequences during this task, he just needed to do it. Hearing this, Marcus had a bad feeling about her request. The day of the ceremony for admitting students to the academy arrived. Some took it seriously and some didn't. Most of the guys were not interested in the ceremony itself, but in who would be there. Everyone was waiting for Master Diana there. Jimmy also arrived at this ceremony. The spirit sealed in his ring asked, "Does Jimmy have a master whom he is ready to bow to?" Jimmy replied that it wasn't that important, he was only here for 3 reasons: opportunity, opportunity, and more opportunity. Well, if everything is as the spirit says, and someone intercepts its capabilities, then it will interrupt this person's life. But since we are talking about this, Jimmy believes that only he is worthy of being Lady Ariel's man. His thoughts were interrupted by Marcus, who flew on a sword to the ceremony of selecting participants. As soon as Marcus saw Jimmy, he immediately walked towards him. You could see in Marcus's gaze how he looked down on Jimmy and with great contempt. At that moment, Jimmy was worried that Marcus might get him into some trouble again. Immediately after which Marcus shouted at the top of his voice that he was warning Jimmy that he would kill him if he saw him again. After which he began to shout at him in front of everyone, insult and humiliate him. After which the system confirmed the successful completion of this scene and gave him rewards for this. Jimmy could not tolerate such an impudent attitude towards himself, and said that he would kill Marcus for this. But Marcus was only happy that finally the next storyline was successfully completed. He even thanked Jimmy for his dedication to his work, because this way he could mock him even more. Jimmy was so furious that he said that the warrior was ready to accept death, but would never accept such humiliation and was ready to fight. The people around were amazed at the incredible power emanating from Jimmy. But the smile on Marcus's face never went away. He was so pleased that the storyline was progressing just perfectly. Suddenly Jimmy heard someone's voice telling him to stop what he was planning. Marcus's sister, Ariel, watched all of this from above. Seeing Ariel, Jimmy immediately switched to her. And then Marcus was completely overjoyed, because never before had everything gone as perfectly as it did now. Ariel went down to the guys, which is why Jimmy calmed down and sheathed his sword. When Jimmy saw such a beauty in front of him, he began to behave very reservedly. But before he even had time to introduce himself, he received a good slap in the face from Ariel. Yes, such that after it he flew a considerable distance, having broken even a stone wall with his body, which was previously located 100 meters from him. Absolutely everyone was shocked by this turn of events, but Marcus experienced the greatest horror, because this should not have happened. The plot changed again, after which Ariel turned to Marcus and asked for an apology for scaring him. In addition, saying that this guy deserved to get paid for daring to act so rudely towards Marcus. Marcus was in despair. Another storyline was destroyed. At this time, Jimmy was also not in the best condition. He was so furious that he was ready to kill absolutely everyone here. Jimmy was so furious that he told the spirit that if he did not explain to him what was happening here, he would throw the ring away with him. In response, the spirit said that a person capable of influencing the future had appeared on the school grounds. The spirit in every possible way told Jimmy that they had better leave this school before that person discovered Jimmy and ruined everything completely. Marcus mentally told Jimmy not to listen to this spirit. Even Marcus himself wanted to help him catch up. But if he listens to this spirit, then Marcus' path as a villain will be lost forever. In response to the words of the spirit, Jimmy only smiled and asked to listen to him carefully. He said that if heaven accepted him, then he would go against his will and enter into battle with Marcus, or he would crush him. Jimmy was already completely crazy. He said that he would not only defeat Marcus, but also subjugate all the women of Phoenix Peak. Seeing such anger in his eyes, Marcus rejoiced again. He so wanted Jimmy to finally deal with him. But Marcus's joy was interrupted by Ariel. She told his brother to retreat, because this man was plotting something bad against him. Marcus asked Ariel if she really didn't believe in him that much, and then asked him to leave. Ariel mentally replied that she believed in him, only according to her memories. Demonic beast Jimmy will expose Marcus as a pervert, but she could not be sure that this thing belonged to the master, and even if it did, he had a reason for it. Ariel said that she would not let her brother in response to which Marcus said that this fight was only between men. Jimmy didn't like this. They talked to each other as if he wasn't in front of them, but suddenly his anger was interrupted by a phoenix flying in the sky. Marcus recognized this bird, because it was the head of Fengming Peak. Seeing her, Marcus was even more happy, because she is Jimmy's main support in this battle. It was a beauty named Ashley, who was the head of Fengming Peak. Just the sight of her made the guys around her feel uneasy. Only after seeing her, Jimmy told the spirit that he would listen to him and would not fight Marcus today. Ariel was afraid that since she had really arrived, the actions from her memories would still happen. In the original, Ashley felt sympathy for the main character, but due to her position as a widow, she maintained her distance. Well, the character of his sisters and master went downhill. He could only hope that Ashley's behavior was no different from the original. Well, now it's time for the villain to take the stage and demonstrate his seduction skills. The first point was to openly stare at her breasts. The second point was a confident grin. Well, the third and last action was direct compliments. Marcus said that they haven't seen each other for a long time, but with each new meeting, Ashley shines brighter and brighter. But he knew that in the original plot Ashley should not give this flower much importance, and, in addition to this, also scold him for such blatant actions. But instead, Ashley said that she would gladly accept his flower. Marcus didn't know what to react to, the fact that Ashley's breasts were even larger up close, or the fact that her character was different from the original. Ashley said that Diana was truly lucky to have a student, no wonder she. But before she could finish speaking, her attention fell on Jimmy. She said that he had a lot of arrogance since he dared to incite a student from her school. Therefore, she hopes that Jimmy realizes what the punishment for this may be. Marcus was again perplexed as to why even Aunt Ashley was acting completely differently. All Jimmy could do at that moment was to tighten his knees in fear, because she was too strong for him. Jimmy even asked the spirit for help, but he did not answer him, which made Jimmy very angry, because at such moments he pretends to be dead. Marcus did not understand what to do, because if he stood up for Jimmy, then the image of the villain would be forever destroyed. But, on the other hand, if he remains inactive, he will simply die and Marcus will not be able to play his role further. Suddenly, a voice asked Ashley why there was so much anger towards an ordinary student. It turned out that it was Uncle Derek, whom Marcus was incredibly happy to see, because thanks to him, the storyline had not yet been lost. Only in the original story, this short old man was actually the intriguer who almost ruined the school. Being a fairly important character in this storyline, he will be able to at least somewhat resolve this conflict. Derek explained this by saying that, due to his age, the boy simply did not know how everything worked. In response, Ashley said that only out of respect for him she would spare Jimmy, but warned that next time there would be no mercy. After which Ashley immediately asked if her student was okay, in response to which Marcus said that he was fine. Immediately after this, she approached Marcus and said that she found extraordinary inclinations in him, so she would like to teach him a couple of things. Marcus didn't remember that there was such an episode in the original, so he began to doubt the originality of the novella he read. But Ashley at that moment was only thinking about how charming this guy had grown up, how she hadn't noticed him before. It was not surprising to her that, having such a handsome man with her, Diana treated Jimmy with complete indifference. But given that she knows the consequences of the future, this does not mean that she will do her any favors. The ceremony would begin soon, and Marcus still didn't understand what was happening and why everything was happening this way. And then they announced that the ceremony would begin any minute. All the participants were already ready. But Marcus noticed that not all of his sisters were present at the ceremony, so not everyone would see his epic fall. Marcus was only reassured by the fact that Jimmy was still here and ready to take part in the ceremony, or he would defeat Marcus. With just one click of a finger, Chris was already standing next to Marcus. Marcus was pleased that Chris was one of the most reliable and constant characters in the original plot. He asked Chris if she saw that guy in black clothes behind the crowd. Marcus said that this was his younger cousin, and because of his capabilities, he wanted to help him go through the ceremony. It was a golden elixir of 9 hardenings, which allows one to increase a person's physical characteristics many times over. Marcus asked Chris to give this elixir to Jimmy on one condition: she would not say that it was from him. After all, Marcus is worried that Jimmy will get too nervous because of this, and this could have a bad effect on his performance. At this moment, Chris incredibly admired Marcus, because he is such a caring and kind brother. Immediately after this, Chris told Marcus not to worry, because she would do everything in the best possible way. Marcus said that he needed to stop giving so much slack. If he wanted to return home, he needed to be tougher. Without any hesitation, Chris ran up to Jimmy and shouted that she wanted to help the young warrior. She said it was a strengthening elixir given to all young talents participating in the ceremony. It is called the elixir of 9 hardenings and has the effect of enhancing physical performance. It is better to take it now before the effect weakens. Jimmy said that he would definitely accept it, after which he asked Chris to convey his gratitude to the elders who gave this elixir. In response, Chris replied that she wished him good luck and she would look forward to his victory. Marcus understood that, being a 6th-rank alchemist, Jimmy would easily understand that something was unclean with the elixir. And then, showing ingenuity, he puts the villain in check, and presented the poisonous elixir to the professor. Following this, his sister, obsessed with justice, will jump out and expose him to everyone present. Marcus was looking forward to Jimmy understanding everything and taking this elixir to the professor, thereby smearing his reputation. But at that moment Jimmy exceeded all his expectations. Instead of taking the elixir to be checked, he took it and simply took it. Marcus fell into a stupor. Even Jimmy's behavior differs from the original plot. But before taking it, the spirit in Jimmy still noticed that something was wrong with the elixir. Jimmy didn't understand whether Marcus had really thought of fooling him with such a pathetic trick, slipping him the elixir of the family of absolutes, which is used against fighters at the initial stage, which also harms internal energy. But Marcus showed with all his appearance that this was his idea. He should have at least learned to hide his intentions. The spirit said that if they used this elixir as evidence now, Marcus would be severely punished. But Jimmy replied that in that case he would get off too easily, so why not play along with his plan? After all, before this, the spirit taught Jimmy to neutralize any poisonous drugs of the 5th rank and below. Jimmy had a rather strange plan. He planned to take the elixir, and thereby force Marcus to pay a heavy price. After Jimmy took the pill, absolutely everyone around him smelled it, and it was far from a pleasant smell. The poison began to act very quickly. Now he uses his technique to suppress its effect, and then appeal to the elders with a complaint. Jimmy began to worry because his technique was unable to suppress the effect of the poison. Instead it only spread through his body even more. The poison caused Jimmy to bleed heavily, which scared him greatly. The spirit said that this is far from an ordinary elixir. It was made by a 3rd-rank alchemist, so its effect is quite strong. Jimmy got even angrier. He didn't understand why the spirit didn't warn him about this right away. And then, without waiting for an answer, he completely threw the ring away. Ariel said that everything worked out for them, and now Marcus doesn't have to worry about this guy hurting him in any way. Things were really bad for Jimmy. He still had not been able to neutralize the poison. He understood that at this rate he could die. Therefore, he began to reach for his ring, asking the spirit for forgiveness and asking him for salvation. The spirit said that he would still help him, and reminded him that he had given Jimmy another ice heart technique that could cope with this poison. This really helped, because Jimmy once again asked him for an apology and said that this would not happen again. He understood that this spirit was now his only support, so he could no longer displease him. In response, the spirit said that if Jimmy still listens to his advice and leaves the school, then he will finally be able to breathe easy. Jimmy replied that he couldn't do that and said that Marcus had turned against him again, so Jimmy had to cut him into small pieces. The guy was sure that now Marcus was making a smug face, mocking Jimmy's suffering, but instead of a grin on his face, he saw only worry, which confused Jimmy even more. Marcus was afraid that he could really die, because in that case he would not have been able to return home. The guy was confused, the character of the female characters was broken, and on top of that, the plot with the elixir also deviated from the original. But in this case, since I didn't work, Marcus uses a different tactic. Now he is going to use his master's stockings, and so the organizers call Jimmy into the arena for inspection. But Jimmy still didn't enter the arena. The organizers already thought that he wouldn't come at all. Moments later, Jimmy steps into the arena with complete confidence in himself. Jimmy knew that now crowds of people were looking at him with hope in him, because he was the chosen one of fate. Some believed that if he was properly trained, he would become an incredible warrior with unlimited potential. Looking at how he arrived late and stood in the arena with such a confident face, Marcus's face changed. When Jimmy entered the arena, he immediately asked where his opponent was, and a moment later some gloomy guy appeared in front of him, who said that today he would be his opponent. Jimmy didn't understand what the point of the battle was if it ended with just one attack, but the guy only responded aggressively so that he would not underestimate him, because he was now at the stage of chi tempering. In this case, Derek asked Jimmy how he wanted to pass his test. Without thinking for a second, Jimmy pointed to someone in the crowd and said that he wanted to challenge him to a fight. That someone was none other than Marcus, who Jimmy wanted to fight. Jimmy only wanted the opportunity to fight to the death. If in 10 attacks he did not defeat Marcus, then he would bow to the ground and admit defeat. Marcus agreed to his proposal, because according to the plot, Marcus was supposed to get punched in the face by him sooner or later. Jimmy warned Marcus that for all the humiliation that he suffered because of him, he would repay him tenfold. The referee already wanted to start the battle between the guys, announcing the start of the fight. Suddenly the referee was interrupted by Vanessa, who said that Jimmy was not worthy of fighting her brother, and she would go instead. The referee explained that Vanessa's behavior was putting him in an awkward position, but Vanessa said that she was simply worried about her brother. Marcus is tired of someone always trying to stop him from carrying out his plan. The elders recognize this girl because she has the heart of Qin and the soul of a sword that is unlikely to be seen once every 1,000 years. Derek was worried that at this rate there might be a serious problem. He was afraid that if they did, they would have to intervene. But Ashley said that since this doesn't bother Vanessa herself, then they don't need to worry about trifles. Marcus angrily asked why she was still here, and then added that this was a man's fight. But as soon as Vanessa took his hand, he felt that something was wrong with her hand. Looking at her more closely, he noticed that she had a large number of burns. And then he understood everything. Vanessa was mastering the 7th volume of the art of heavenly sounds through force. This art was incredibly difficult to master and also very dangerous to use. Marcus, with clearly expressed concern, asked Vanessa why she practiced the dark technique. In response, he received a modest answer that this was all so that she could protect him. But Marcus is the main villain in this plot, and even if one masters such a technique, it will be only for the sake of the main character. Vanessa only regretted that she always understood her brother's actions incorrectly, but now everything has changed. Now she believes that Marcus is the true, lonely hero. Besides, who is the one who was trying to fight back against Jimmy, this star of misfortune? Vanessa asked Marcus to let her enter this fight. But just as Marcus was about to say something, a cloud of green energy appeared right above him. It turned out that it was the head of the Phoenix Peak, Master Teacher Diana. She told Vanessa not to try to stop her brother from having a fight with Jimmy, after which she asked Marcus if he was confident in himself and his abilities. Marcus replied that he would certainly win in order to thank the master for his kindness. But immediately after these words, a system notification appeared near Marcus with upgrades to his characteristics. And after that, the master put her hand on Marcus's shoulder and said that they believed in his victory. In addition, she asked not to forget their conversation yesterday, because as soon as he gets the opportunity, he must kill Jimmy. She said that if Marcus won, she would give him a reward he could never have dreamed of. And now the start of their duel begins. Each of them was serious and confident. Derek commented with a little concern for Marcus, because this is a fight to the death after all. The first elder said that if necessary, they would stop the fighting and settle all differences between the two sides. Ashley asked if Diana really wasn't worried about her student. And the second elder said that she should not be underestimated, and besides, this mortal duel was simply necessary. In response to their words, Diana said that they should not worry about her student, because he would become the greatest of all. At that moment, Jimmy said that Marcus became a corpse when he allowed himself insolence towards Jimmy last night. But Jimmy told him not to worry, because after Marcus's death, he should take good care of his sisters and the master. After hearing this, Marcus already doubted that he was the villain here, and not Jimmy. Well, after that, Marcus warned Jimmy that after such words he might not even dream of leaving here unharmed. Immediately after that he pointed his sword at him and said that they were now using fencing techniques worthy of an older student. But this did not please Diana at all, because she taught him a very powerful technique, and Marcus would not even bother to use it. And the elder commented on this by saying that, without fighting at full strength, Marcus seemed to be asking for death. But Jimmy only said that there was a lot of show in his words, he himself was barely holding on, so Jimmy would finish him off as quickly as possible. Marcus himself knew that although his attack looked impressive, he actually put 1/10 of his strength into this attack. But unexpectedly for Marcus, he again received an increase in strength from the system, which can be seen on his face, did not please him. Now Marcus was rushing towards Jimmy with an incredibly strong attack. This strong attack was not to his advantage, since he did not want to kill Jimmy. After seeing the attack, the sisters began to respect their brother even more. The elders were shocked because such an attack could only be carried out by a person who had mastered the formless essence of the sword. Ashley remembered that in the past, Marcus did not have such exceptional abilities as he does now. She thought that maybe someone had made an attempt to change all causes and effects and endowed Marcus with such power. Ashley looked at Diana and thought that she already knew about everything. Only Diana herself is now no less delighted than the others, because her student has become so strong. After the smokescreen clears, Jimmy can be seen barely surviving being hit by Marcus. At this moment, Marcus was amazed. He was very lucky that he managed to contain the power in his attack at the last moment, otherwise he would have died. Well, Jimmy said that Marcus should be given his due, because at the decisive moment he is able to avert trouble. Despite Jimmy's condition, Marcus was still willing to be beaten in order to fulfill all the conditions of the scenario. But instead, Jimmy, as promised, knelt down and admitted defeat to Marcus. Marcus was amazed. He barely lowered his attack power to 30%, and Jimmy had already given up. Following the fight, one of the elders said that since Jimmy had already admitted defeat, then this could be the end of it. After such an attack, Jimmy was scared. He understood perfectly well that he could not repel such an attack again. Marcus was shocked that such a strong and strong-willed guy like Jimmy turned out to be such a doormat. But suddenly he noticed a sable of purple flame behind Jimmy. In the original, after Jimmy defeated Marcus, this sable revealed the fact that Marcus stole the master's stockings. Therefore, Marcus knew perfectly well what awaited him now. The sable had to show everyone that he was an incorrigible pervert. Marcus even began to enjoy this anticipation of events. But suddenly out of nowhere something hit the sable, and a moment later he was already lying on the ground with wounds. Again, someone interfered with Marcus's implementation of the scenario. Who will it be this time? It was Diana, with a fiery speech, where it was said that despite Jimmy's defeat, he vilely used the sable for an attack. But Jimmy began to say that he did not ask the sable for this, so it was not his fault. Marcus was already tired of this system. He did not understand why everyone around him was not going according to the script. How this system invites him to single-handedly maintain the original plot while playing the villain. At this moment, Marcus completely fell into despair. He no longer wanted to do anything. But suddenly, a warning from the system appeared right in front of him. Due to his loss of spirit, the system warned that at any moment Marcus could fail the task and deviate from the plot. This notice was another reason why Marcus didn't know what to do. His sisters started to worry about him, because their brother just won, but he still looks bad. Master Diana and even the elder did not understand what happened to Marcus. Marcus has already begun to think about throwing away the original plot and starting to live a normal life in this world. But then he remembered that now all his relatives were waiting for him in another world until he left the room. And in the end, he decided that he would return home, because he still had his parents and younger sister there, whom he still wanted to see. All that remains for Marcus to do is to find out why, after Jimmy arrived in these mountains, the plot changed radically. But this one didn't worry about anything, because he knew that over time he would definitely find out everything. To successfully complete the system's mission, Marcus needs to live the life of a villain in these mountains to the end. While Marcus fell into thought, his sisters had already come to congratulate him on his victory over Jimmy. And at that moment the master was happy, saying that in the end he did not disappoint her expectations. But Diana thought the sisters' behavior was a little strange, because based on their memories, they were supposed to fall in love with Jimmy. They should have slowly begun to hate Marcus, had his fate really changed so much already. Diana should be happy about these developments, but instead now she feels so lost. Marcus mentally told the master to be calm, because tonight he will definitely visit her in order to show her gratitude. Along the way, having figured out at what points in the plot movement problems arose, Jimmy was furious, because originally it was supposed to be him, the person everyone should admire after winning. The spirit once again told Jimmy that there was a man on the school grounds who had intercepted his life-changing opportunities. Therefore, they should now focus on accumulating Jimmy's strength. But Jimmy still says he will never give up. In addition, he felt somehow bad after the fight with Marcus. The spirit replied that after it Jimmy had many organs damaged. But thanks to his spirit, Jimmy recovered from that incredibly strong blow from Marcus. He couldn't even imagine that this Marcus would be so strong. This was Jimmy's first defeat of all time. But as soon as Marcus appeared from behind Jimmy and asked if he had called him, he was scared shitless. Jimmy didn't understand what Marcus wanted from him again, because he kept his promise. He admitted defeat and bowed to the ground. In response, Marcus told him to guess what he wanted from him. He needed to check if the character of this worthless protagonist had undergone any changes. Jimmy began to suspect something was wrong, and he didn't like the way Marcus was looking at him. But suddenly someone interrupted their pleasant conversation, telling Marcus that when possible, people should be lenient. It turned out that it was Uncle Derek, who was rubbing in that school was not the place for such disrespect for opponents. Marcus didn't understand since when did he stand up for Jimmy. When they were already leaving, Marcus said that he had no intention of getting his hands dirty on him anyway. He also said that there was no need to rush now. First he would play with it a little, and at the same time see what they decided. Although the ceremony did not go the same way as in the novel, in the end everything ended well, without any major changes. His thoughts were interrupted by one of the sisters, who was at the same time in the forest to help Marcus. It was Marcus's younger sister, Lou, but it was unclear what she was doing in the forest at such a time. Suddenly, Marcus noticed the dark accelerator pearls that were on Lou's neck. He was very surprised that she had already managed to get them. According to legends, this accessory belonged to one of the elder gods of antiquity, who was able to take control of many animals. Had his little sister really brought along a herd of magical beasts to destroy everything here? Looking behind Lou, he was convinced of his own words. She had brought with her a huge flock of magical animals, explaining everything by saying that she only wants to protect her best brother in the world. Lou said that now she aims to kill Jimmy and raise Marcus to unprecedented heights, so he will become only hers. And even if her sisters try to stop her, she did not have time to finish what she wanted. How Marcus put his hand on her head to calm her down a little, and he told the sisters, who had already arrived to them, to wait here, because he needed to talk with Lou. He was worried that recently, his younger sister's character had changed. She had become more hostile and withdrawn. The first thing he wanted to do was find out what she was planning by showing up just now. But looking at her brother, she could not concentrate and answer him normally. In response, Marcus said that she should not worry and she could tell him everything calmly. Lou replied that she wanted to help Marcus out and not let the stupid man harm him, and she also wanted to take him with her. Joyfully, Lou shouted out that she would always want to be with Marcus. Maybe in the world of cultivation, Marcus's age does not matter, but his mental age based on everything is about 50 years. And his sister Lou, a little girl who has recently reached marriageable age, is too big a difference for him. Marcus no longer knew what to think. Where did he make a mistake, that now his sister was behaving like this? Lou interrupted Marcus while he was deep in thought and said that she now understood everything. She said that no matter what her brother did, she would always be on his side. But when Lou hugged Marcus, he took her by the waist. Lou reacted a little strangely and Marcus was surprised that he had already become so accustomed to the role of the villain that he could not resist saying obscenities. Marcus asked Lou if he really shouldn't have done this. In response, Lou replied that that was not the point, because it all happened somehow too unexpectedly for her. Immediately after this, a notification window popped up in front of Marcus with congratulations regarding the successful completion of this storyline. Marcus was shocked. He did not understand what main storyline he had now successfully completed. He demanded an explanation from the system. He was rewarded with a ceremonial sword, which, according to Marcus's recollections, was Jimmy's main symbol of boasting. At the time, Jimmy thanked Uncle Derek for saving him from Marcus. Jimmy said that this had never happened to him before, that he emotionally allowed himself to bow to someone. Usually it happens the other way around, but it was all Marcus's fault. Jimmy was ashamed that he had disgraced himself so much. Now he even thinks that because of this incident no one will want to take him as their student. In response, the spirit said that this would only benefit them, because they would finally be able to leave this ruinous place. But then Derek invited Jimmy to join his family tree and become his successor student. As soon as Jamie heard this proposal, he immediately agreed to it, getting down on his knee. In response, Derek said that there was no need to do this and that he needed to get off his knees as soon as possible. Derek said that during the battle with Marcus, he saw in Jimmy the makings of becoming a great warrior. In response, Jimmy said that from this day forward he would honor and support Master Derek. Jimmy described this situation as heaven favoring him. After all, by entering the school, he will have a chance to settle the score with Marcus, and at the same time finish off the madman who intercepted his fate. The spirit's reaction was reasonable, because it endowed Jimmy with special techniques, and now he simply swears allegiance to another master. But Jimmy took this as envy, because his business has just started to improve, and this pathetic old man only hopes for his existence. The spirit wondered if his calculations regarding Jimmy were wrong, and then a pretty good idea occurred to him. Perhaps the person who has been intercepting Jimmy's fate all this time is Marcus. On the same day, Marcus was asked to evaluate potential students for the presence of any inclinations for acceptance. Marcus's decision fell on the girls, who, in his opinion, had good enough inclinations to join their school. Therefore, Marcus asked to be allowed to bring them here and give them basic training. In response, his sisters told him not to worry about such trifles, because he could leave this work to them. But judging by Marcus's face, he was quite happy with this kind of work, and he didn't want to give it up to anyone. Chris said that now Marcus is an important person and he should not bother with such trifles, and besides, he wanted to meet with the head. In that case, since he was unlucky enough to educate the younger students, he would go and take care of his master. Approaching the master's house, Marcus assumed that all the problems in the plot were connected with her. Well, when Marcus went inside, he saw the master sitting opposite the door, who, for his great success in the battle with Jimmy, wanted to reward him in a special way. It turned out that in her dirty fantasies the special reward was washing her feet. To Marcus, this method of reward did not seem appropriate, and in some places even seemed perverted. But for Diana herself, this seemed like an excellent reward, because she is an unattainable beauty throughout the school. Diana stopped liking this. She didn't understand why Marcus still didn't enjoy his reward. But Marcus replied that the student would under no circumstances allow himself such disrespect. It was difficult for Marcus to make a decision, because even in the original plot, the main character did not go beyond his own fantasies. In that case, if Marcus doesn't want to do this, then why did he steal something that belonged to the master? Before he could finish speaking, Marcus already understood what was being said. These were the same stockings that he had stolen that evening. After realizing everything that was happening now, Marcus felt ashamed. He just wanted to fall into the ground at that moment. But he had nothing to do. He needed to somehow get out of this situation. The only way was to somehow powder his brains. He said that since this was the case, he would certainly show his skills and fulfill the master's request. And he immediately said that her student was quite familiar with the art of washing feet. He said that his special 18 techniques would make her plunge into a sea of pleasure and forget about everything else. In response, Diana only laughed and said that this was truly a worthy technique and masterful work of hands. But suddenly Marcus realized that they were all just characters in a novel that he needed to finish without diving into it even deeper. As soon as Marcus thought about it, the master said that this would be enough and she was pleased with his work. But even here, a surprise awaited Marcus. The system rewarded him for yet another completion of the storyline. After Marcus finished washing the master's feet, she asked if he agreed because of her request to look after her for the rest of her life. For some time there was an unpleasant pause between them, as if he didn't know what he should say. But in the end, Diana said that it was getting late and Marcus should go to bed early today. Although he had mastered the formless essence of the sword, in the fight with Jimmy it was clear that the degree of his control over it was very small. In addition, saying that next month, the disciples of all 5 bloodlines will go to the Sword Realm dungeon, and it wouldn't hurt for him, as the eldest disciple of Phoenix Peak, to acquire his own Zanpakuto of Fate. Despite the fact that Diana has learned all the causes and consequences of the future, many unclear moments still appear in her path. But the only thing she knows for sure is that under no circumstances should Jimmy stay at Qinglan School. Diana promised herself that she would use all her strength to raise Marcus as the god of fencing of their time. Suddenly, an unknown voice said that no one could have thought that someone like Diana would one day be captured by her own feelings. Although she had to admit that her student actually looked pretty good. Diana said that if Evelyn continued to insult the purity of the relationship between her and Marcus, then she would have to face her wrath. And it won't even bother her that Evelyn is now a wandering spirit from the upper world. In response, Evelyn said that Diana was not being very respectful towards the eldest ancestor of the school. Well, in the end she said she didn't want to gloat, but she still doesn't think that Evelyn did the absolutely right thing. Her Zanpakuto is worth the twin phoenix souls. If she gives a man the sword aspiration, then one of the phoenixes will penetrate his sword spirit. After this happens, her whole life will be connected with this man, but if she falls in love with another, then her soul will be subject to eternal flame. Only Marcus himself is not deprived of female attention, and he was never able to answer her question. After these words, Diana stopped holding back. She ordered Evelyn to shut up, because their student had a pure relationship. But Evelyn said in time that she understood everything and asked Diana not to be angry anymore. After which, without thinking twice, Evelina had a question for Diana. Evelyn asked how Diana managed to find out where she was and free her from magical captivity so quickly. Diana replied that she saw the future. After all, if Jimmy gains influence, the school will be doomed to destruction. So she had to get ahead of him. From her memories, Jimmy was supposed to sneak into the restricted area of the school, treat Evelyn as his mentor and get her inheritance. But in the end, Evelyn said she would lend a helping hand to Diana. After all, one way or another, this school was founded by her husband, so she must help protect his creation. At that time, the middle sister, Vanessa, was waiting for her brother outside his room. But he still hasn't returned, although it was already quite late, so he really went to the mountains. But Vanessa was not going to give up, because today she definitely had to meet her brother, because this could not be put off any longer. Ultimately, Vanessa decided to go inside, where the first thing she saw was Marcus' empty bed. Vanessa was surprised that this is what her older brother's bed looked like, and suddenly some thought flashed through her head, which she tried as hard as possible to reject, saying that she couldn't do that. But after thinking a little more, Vanessa realized that, be that as it may, her older brother was not here now. Immediately after that, she fell onto his bed and began to enjoy the smell left behind by Marcus. Only it turned out that Marcus was still at home, and after seeing this whole picture, he did not understand that his sister had forgotten on his bed. But he was still serious about finding out why the female characters around him had changed in character and were different from the original. While lying on the bed, Vanessa felt something hard under the blanket. It turned out that these were pictures of sisters bathing in thermal waters. Seeing that Vanessa noticed this picture, Marcus thought that now he was definitely lost to society and his image was forever destroyed. Only now Marcus remembered that he has the role of a villain, so his image in the eyes of others should not interest him. After a couple of seconds, he finally decided to intervene in this mess, and asked his sister who allowed her to break into his room. When Vanessa turned to look at Marcus, he noticed that she was blushing. Marcus knew that no matter how kind and gentle she was, after witnessing such vulgar acts, he didn't think she could forgive him. Mentally, Marcus said that she could yell at him or even hit him, but then he would turn the arrows on her and transfer the threat, like a true villain. But instead of doing any of this, Vanessa simply broke this picture, with the words that if her brother has a similar hobby, then what prevented him from just looking at her? But Marcus replied that he only used the memory stone to look at how his sisters had grown up. Well, what about her? She brazenly burst into his room in the middle of the night, and even jumped on the bed. With a devious grin on his face, Marcus asked what the true purpose of such actions was. Vanessa replied that Jimmy had injured Marcus earlier in the day, so she was worried about him. And again, with a strange expression on his face, Marcus asked if he should reward her for such sweet care. Marcus began to move closer and closer to her, with the hope that she would eventually fight back and evade him. As Marcus got closer and closer, he worried that from that moment on the original script would definitely come to an end. But at one point, Vanessa still put her hand up to prevent Marcus from coming closer. At this moment, Marcus was incredibly happy because his sister was finally starting to play according to the script. He thought that this was a sign of the restoration of the correct plot, since nothing really could happen between them. But literally a moment later, all his guesses and thoughts regarding this were destroyed, because Vanessa kissed him. At that moment, Vanessa became the first one to take Marcus's first kiss, although even this played a role of secondary importance for Marcus. After a couple of moments, Marcus pushed me away from him. He asked her to finally wake up, because he is the antagonist, not the main character in her life. Hearing such words from her brother, Vanessa even began to cry, as a result of which she asked him for an apology. Seeing this, Marcus quickly calmed down, but he was still surprised by his sister's behavior, although he forgave her. Overjoyed, Vanessa hugged her brother and said that she knew that her brother would not blame her. At this moment, Marcus mentally said that he had observed the behavior of his sisters not only from the novel, but also for 10 years in real life. Ariel threw off the burden of the past and became the best of the best sword cultivators. Lou went from being a crybaby who was brought to tears by the mere sight of a spirit beast, to an outstanding animal mentor. Well, Vanessa, from a fragile and weak baby, turned into a goddess of magical energy, and her fame amazed the entire school. When Marcus took time off from work, and the Master of the Eternal traveled the world, the tenacity and will of these three became the support for this family. After spending 10 years with them, he can no longer call them just characters in a novel, because behind their backs he did a lot of things for them. Marcus noticed that his so-called armor had cracked, so he needed to bring it to clean water as soon as possible. Taking her by the shoulder, Marcus said that today she had acted unceremoniously towards him, so he could not close his eyes to it now. Therefore, now he will ask her 3 questions to which he wants to hear the most honest answer, to which Vanessa, of course, agreed. The first thing Marcus asked was if Vanessa had met Jimmy before he came to this school. Blushing, Vanessa replied that she had never met him before. Marcus learned that Vanessa can't lie, so if she says she hasn't met him before, then she has. Although in fact Vanessa knew him only thanks to the scenario that arose in her head, she answered Marcus' question with the truth. Well then, something doesn't add up here, because at the moment when Jimmy began to provoke Marcus, Vanessa's gaze was filled with hatred. She had the expression on her face that appears when you want to kill a person then, and there was no way to hide it. Then Marcus asked her the next question, what did she feel when she saw Jimmy? Vanessa said with complete seriousness that although she did not know him personally, when she saw him, she had a strong desire. Marcus was surprised by such a bright statement from his sister. Before Vanessa could finish what she wanted to say, she noticed Marcus' reaction to it and stopped. Vanessa understood that if she continued in the same spirit, Marcus would suspect something, so she said that she could not evaluate a stranger. Marcus was interested in this answer, whether such seriousness in the answer could mean that she knew Jimmy's true identity. Apparently, Vanessa is not completely honest with him. If she really met Jamie for the first time, then why does she have such a thirst for blood? Then all he needs is to find out Vanessa's point of view regarding Jimmy. And so, instead of the third question, Marcus came up with one interesting task. He asked her for one favor. He would like Vanessa to sneak into Tiandan Peak and lure Jimmy into a trap, but if she doesn't want that, then it's okay. A moment later, a smile appeared on Vanessa's face and she asked if her brother wanted her to help him kill Jimmy. Without even hearing an answer, Vanessa asked if it was necessary to leave the entire corpse, or if this was not necessary. During this time, Jimmy practiced controlling his magic. Jimmy was very happy because he had finally reached the level of laying the foundations, for which he was very grateful to that spirit. After which the spirit asked him whether Jimmy would even now continue to claim that he was an ordinary non-entity to him. In response, Jimmy said that he once again apologized to him and would continue to try to listen to all the advice of this spirit. Suddenly a guy came into Jimmy's room and said that Vanessa from Phoenix Peak had come for a visit, wanting to apologize to Jimmy. The spirit told Jimmy that he should be careful, because all the time the people from Phoenix Peak had evil intentions towards Jimmy. But despite the spirit's next advice, Jimmy replied that he would come to her now. Jimmy told the spirit not to worry, because he would never be afraid of just one girl, and besides, he was wondering what she was up to. The spirit was surprised that Jimmy's youth had gone to his head again, and he again did not perceive human speech. And after some time, Jimmy and Vanessa met again. Jimmy first greeted Vanessa, and then immediately got to the point of the conversation and asked what brought her here. Vanessa replied that she came to express her regrets regarding the behavior of her older brother. All today during the battles, her brother did not even think about calculating his strength, thereby harming Jimmy. Therefore, she believes that he really treated him unfairly rudely. Based on her pink face, Jimmy concluded that she still liked him. Only now Vanessa's face turns red every time she lies, but knowing this she still needs to hold on. Vanessa believes that the blame lies entirely with her brother, because when he saw that her sister Ariel fell in love with Jimmy, he hated him. Only this was complete nonsense, because Marcus only likes Vanessa. Vanessa herself thought so. After which Vanessa said that in this case Jimmy was absolutely not to blame, but in reality, Vanessa only wanted him dead. Jimmy was shocked by such a speech, because finally someone understood him, and his aura was the chosen one of fate, thanks to whom he conquered all the girls at first sight. She returned to him again. When Jimmy realized Vanessa's intention, he walked over to hug her, but Vanessa avoided and asked Jimmy to apologize, because it was too fast for her. For Jimmy this was not a problem, because he understood everything. Vanessa was just still shy. Just as Jimmy wanted to invite her to go somewhere, Vanessa herself wanted to show him one beautiful place. After all, he just recently entered this school, and probably still doesn't know that in the Qinglan Mountains there are many wonderful landscapes and mountain abodes. Therefore, she would like to give him a little tour, even if it is a small atonement for the actions of her older brother. A moment later, Vanessa flew up on her own sword and asked Jimmy to keep up. Well, if Vanessa decided to play cat and mouse with Jimmy, then he likes such games. Vanessa was surprised, because he had only recently joined their school, but despite this he had such a strong technique. Jimmy mentally said that he had put all his true strength into this technique. Does he really think that this time all the circumstances will turn out for him the same as last time? But he had no idea that the only reason she was here now was an assignment from her older brother. Their first landing point was hot springs in the mountains. Vanessa asked Jimmy to wait here for a couple of minutes. She needed to do something, after which she would immediately return to him. The spirit told Jimmy that he feared she left him here for a reason. In response, the guy said that he doesn't know how to read the atmosphere at all, because she is preparing for the fantastic night that awaits them ahead. But the spirit continued to insist on his own. he said that they were brought to a rather unusual place, so most likely he was deceived. Jimmy still didn't understand why the spirit was so skeptical. In response, the spirit said that this place is saturated with energy of the highest quality, and this is one of the rarest places of attraction and spiritual energy. Usually, students who form the core of the school, and sometimes even stewards and elders, are brought to such rare lands. In addition, yin energy predominates in this place, but the presence of yang is extremely weak. The spirit does not understand why this is so, but in any case it is necessary to leave here. Jimmy said that the spirit underestimated his luck too much, because other than the fight with Marcus, he had never been in trouble before. Jimmy waited for Vanessa for 1 hour, but she never returned. Did her bathing take so long? Maybe this is a sign for him to take the initiative and go after her first. But the first thing he saw were students flying in the sky who were training in these mountains, and right next to them was the pond of the Heavenly Maiden, where Vanessa supposedly swam. After walking around the forest a little more, he saw someone in the source. Most likely it was Vanessa. But after a moment he somehow felt worse, as if he began to lose consciousness, where he was met by some girl telling him that how dare he even enter the forbidden bathhouse of Fengming Peak. Jimmy never thought that such a beautiful girl existed in the Fengming bloodline. The spirit said that this is the girl of the owner of the innate warrior essence of Azura, so she is much stronger than Jimmy. But Jimmy said that he had nothing to worry about, because it was best for him to carefully watch how he conquered this beauty. After all, from the very birth he knew that he had a special aura of attractiveness, which no beauty could resist. The next thing he told this girl was that her beauty was truly incomparable. But the girl didn't like this. She immediately attacked Jimmy with a sneak attack, so much so that he didn't even have time to react and was wounded in the arm. Jimmy didn't expect this at all. He saw that this girl had incredible sword aspiration power. Judging by the expression on her face, she was seriously ready to kill him at that moment. The spirit was still in despair, because the first time he met Jimmy, he was not so stupid. After he met Marcus, his personality began to slowly deform. The girl realized that this guy belongs to the bloodline of Uncle Derek, so they should report everything to the master for further action. At this time, Vanessa said that her brother was truly a seer. Now she could return home and report everything to him. But still, one factor confused her, because this girl is both beautiful and endowed with enormous strength. She is probably a desirable goal for any man. Marcus asked her to lure Jimmy here because he knew what kind of character this girl had. Maybe he had feelings for her. In this case, if her brother likes strong girls, then Vanessa will become much stronger than her. Marcus once again receives a gift from the system for successfully completing the storyline, this time all thanks to Vanessa. Only now Marcus remembered that in the original Jimmy should not have received such serious injuries, since Vanessa protected him. Also in the original, Jimmy had a huge harem, which he didn't even use for the most part, but now everything has changed. Since nothing is clear with Vanessa yet, Marcus can only hope for a complete image of the two remaining sisters. Jimmy still entered the School of Immortals, so the main plot thread is still intact. But Marcus is looking forward to the second major story arc, the battle gathering of the 5 bloodlines, where he says he will end. Suddenly, Marcus decided to see if the system gave him anything useful for this event. It turned out that the system gave him a huge number of unique abilities, of which, of course, it was not happy, because they seemed to be created in order to kill immortals with their help. Marcus was angry, because he was already barely able to maintain the integrity of the plot, and then there were these abnormal abilities. Seeing his amount of experience, Marcus wanted to get rid of it, but he didn't have a good feeling about it. But unfortunately, for Marcus, he had no choice as such. The system could force him to accept this whole experience at any moment. As Marcus expected, things didn't go according to plan, and instead, to get rid of all the experience, the system transferred it to Marcus. And from such a huge amount of experience, red energy appeared around Marcus, and his clothes were torn. Suddenly, Marcus felt himself become much stronger and stronger. The first notification from the system after accepting the experience was that the level of sword fencing skill had increased to 50%. The next notice was that the effectiveness of his special abilities in general, as well as his chi energy, had also increased. Marcus was once again furious, because he had again received a boost from the system, and at this rate it would not be difficult for him to kill Jimmy. Well, what Marcus definitely didn't expect was such an inappropriate return of his middle sister Vanessa. But Marcus was still standing naked in front of her, and now they were both in a rather awkward situation. Vanessa asked in horror why he was naked, but still continued to look at him through the gaps between her fingers. But suddenly the system warned Marcus that the destruction of the antagonist character was possible, so he needed to maintain his image. Marcus immediately understood what needed to be done to maintain his image as a villain. After which Marcus began to approach Vanessa, telling her not to take her eyes off him, because they are not in the right relationship for me to avoid each other. And then he approached her and took her by the waist, saying that he would like to show her something impressive. Standing on the cliff of Phoenix Peak, Vanessa asked if she could open her eyes now, because she was a little scared. In response, Marcus told her to trust him and not worry, but after some time, he still opened her eyes to such a beautiful view. It was an incredible nighttime atmosphere on one of the peaks of the Phoenix Peak Mountains, but Vanessa did not expect that by the word impressive, Marcus meant the starry sky above them. Marcus said that she really was impressive, but while he was taking her there, he groped her all over 3 times in order to maintain the image of the villain. He said that in his many years of observing, he had found that there was no better place to admire the moon and stars than this. Afterwards, he mentally said that, raising his head, he watched the beautiful moon, but lowering it, he remembered his native places. But then came a question from Vanessa. She became curious why Marcus decided to deal with Jimmy through the wrong hands. After all, he lured him to that girl, and at the same time he was so sure that Jimmy would be a fool, and that girl would certainly hurt him. Marcus told Vanessa that he was relying only on luck, but in fact he knew very well what this girl was like. Emily had incomparable talents, and at first she felt complete indifference to the daring and frivolous Jimmy. But during the events of the next arc, she suffered an unexpected defeat from Jimmy, after which she began to pay more attention to him. After which, during the episode in the abode of the ball, she and Jimmy were locked in a secret kingdom. In order to survive, they were forced to master the art of twin swords. Suddenly it dawned on Marcus that this time Emily had hurt Jimmy, and she clearly developed a hatred for him. In this case, how can she become the one who masters the art of twin swords with him? Vanessa began to worry that something had happened since her brother's expression had changed so much. In response, Marcus replied that everything was fine with him, and even more, thanks to her, all hatred disappeared from his heart. Confused, Vanessa said that since her brother no longer had any longing left in his heart, in this case, I couldn't make Vanessa feel good too. Marcus didn't understand what to think about what Vanessa is talking about pleasantly now. He had an incredibly large number of options in his head. Vanessa said that she really likes Marcus, so she wants to become his partner. From now on she wants to warm him with her hugs. Then she added that she could only entrust such shameful thoughts to him, and in the future only to him would she be able to pour out her soul. And then, with a sweet face, she asked Marcus if he would agree to such an offer. But Marcus didn't understand how anyone could disagree here, who in his place could refuse her. At first, Marcus wanted to know why she liked him so much, and he also did not understand why Vanessa suffered such changes in her character. He didn't understand whether he wasn't disgusting enough for her, because at Phoenix Peak there were dozens of girls who felt sympathy for him in their hearts. But Vanessa just put her finger to his mouth and told him not to dare talk about himself like that. After which Vanessa, with great seriousness, told Marcus to listen to her now. She recalled how on the first day Vanessa arrived in the mountains, she was helpless and did not feel well, but her brother took care of her. And when she broke the string on her weapon, she was afraid that the elder would punish her, but in secret from Vanessa, Marcus repaired it. And there were a lot of such moments, so for Vanessa, Marcus is actually the most gentle and kind man in this world. Marcus wondered if everyone had discovered what he was doing in the shadows, and that was why their characters had changed. In other words, Vanessa, who was standing in front of Marcus at this very moment, did not fall in love with the perverted book villain. Maybe she fell in love with his soul, which arrived here from Earth. And so Vanessa decided to take the next step. She hugged Marcus and asked him, does he agree, thereby accepting her feelings for him? Marcus embarrassedly replied that for him she was like his own little sister, and him. But before she could finish speaking, Vanessa kissed him again, thereby taking Marcus's second kiss for herself. At that moment, Ariel arrived to them with information regarding the battle training that would take place next month. Once again, the incredibly awkward situation between Marcus and his sisters ensued. But instead of 1,000 words of justification, Marcus decided to take a risk and grabbed Ariel by the hand, hugging her with Vanessa, telling her that she came just in time. Now Marcus really didn't know what to do. He needed to maintain the image of the villain so that his actions did not change the course of the main storyline. Therefore, immediately after this thought, Marcus invited the sisters to have a drink and chat a little. To which the sisters, of course, gladly agreed, giving Marcus a bad feeling. The action moved forward a few years ago, when Ariel was still 10 years old. She sat on the ground, and there was only fire around her. Diana found Ariel crying, and from that moment she decided to take her under her wing. She said that if she went with her, then becoming stronger, she would be able to avenge her parents, who were mercilessly killed. From that moment on, Ariel began training hard to become stronger as quickly as possible. All this hard training was just so that she could finally avenge her parents. But sometimes, when she was training, Marcus decided to tease his older sister because he was bored. 12-year-old Marcus took her sword, Because of this, Ariel constantly had to catch up with him to get her sword. But in the end it was not Ariel who caught him, but Diana, who scolded him for hurting her sister again. After which Marcus said that she had a stupid sword, it was too heavy for him. Looking at Ariel's hands, Diana understood that she was again doing her best in training, which is why she was injuring herself. By the time Diana told Ariel this, Marcus had already gone about his business. As he passed by a building, he heard someone crying inside, so he decided to go in and see what happened. It was 6-year-old Vanessa whose string broke, causing her to become very upset and even cry. Seeing all this, Marcus specifically said that it was he who cut the string, because in the evenings Vanessa does not let him sleep. After which Vanessa, of course, burst into tears even more, so much so that it began to infuriate Marcus too. But in order for Vanessa to calm down and not irritate Marcus, he handed her a book, saying that this was compensation for his action. Vanessa immediately recognized this book, because it was the one she had wanted to read for a very long time. But upon opening the book, Vanessa discovered that all the pages in the book were blank, which made her cry even more, but Marcus didn't care, because now he could sleep peacefully. When Marcus came to his sister at night, when she was already asleep, she was still worried about the string. In a dream, she said that when she woke up, she would definitely tell Master Diana about everything. Marcus was sorry that everything happened this way, but he does all this in order to maintain his image of a villain. Ultimately, Marcus took Vanessa's weapon with him when he left. The next day, when Vanessa woke up, she found that her weapon was safe and sound, because of which she was incredibly pleased, because now she was not afraid that someone would punish her for a broken weapon. It turns out that all this was a dream of the past, a dream that Marcus has not dreamed of for a long time. Suddenly, Marcus felt his head pounding after he woke up. When Marcus opened his eyes and looked around, he found himself lying on the floor, bound by a magic spell. And he found his older sister Ariel lying on him. Marcus was shocked. Was he really that drunk? Because just a moment ago he was enjoying the stars with his sisters, and now, turning to Vanessa, Ariel said that she had given in to them so much, she became drunk immediately after several glasses. Therefore, the only person who can keep Marcus company in the last point of their program is Ariel. Ariel said he's probably tired of playing someone he's not all these years. She said that he doesn't need to pretend anymore because Vanessa has already grown up, and today Marcus will also find out how much Ariel has grown. Only Marcus didn't want this. He knew that Ariel's concept of the word of love was greatly distorted. At this very moment, the system decided to remind Marcus that he needed to maintain the image of a villain. Therefore, Marcus decided to remind his sister that when something like this happens, he loses control over himself and can do something bad. Ariel said that the brother is obviously kind and gentle at heart, but still tries so hard to pretend to be a libertine. But the next thing Ariel did was kiss him, and again Marcus was kissed by his sister. Ariel said that they are so close to each other, but somehow it is not enough for her. She feels an emptiness that she cannot fill. Marcus didn't understand what Ariel was talking about, what kind of void she wanted to fill. And a moment after his question, Ariel's stockings were on his face. Marcus stole the master's stockings. He probably likes women's clothing, because this is her gift as a sign of love for him. The guy was shocked for two reasons: how she knew about stockings and why she was doing it. Only Marcus knew that given the character of his master, even if she knew about it, she would not tell anyone about it. He doesn't know how or why, but within a certain period of time the original plot was already completely destroyed. And even if we assume that this is really so, then what can he, as an insignificant villain, do about it? While Marcus was thinking, Ariel accidentally sneezed and seemed to come to her senses. She immediately apologized to her brother and said that she was a little carried away and most likely it was all because of the drink. This disappointed Marcus even more, because after such an intense event, it was all over. Ariel said that she was actually looking for Marcus on a case. After all, a battle gathering of 5 bloodlines will soon take place, and Ariel does not want Marcus to participate in it. His sisters will perform instead. Besides, if Jimmy starts to provoke him again, they will gladly teach him a lesson so as not to jeopardize Marcus' position. Marcus replied that this was not even discussed, because he, as an honorary senior student, could not hide behind the backs of his own sisters. Ariel's face showed concern for her brother, but Marcus continued to insist on his own. He said that if Jimmy allowed himself to behave like that again, he would teach him a lesson so that he would not even be able to look people in the eye. As he flew away, he told Ariel to look forward to this fight, because if Jimmy goes against him, he will make him know his true horror. But Marcus understood that if he allowed Jimmy to trample him into the ground, then his becoming immortal would not be far off. And so the system again rewarded Marcus for successfully recreating the character, which again was not to his advantage. Marcus thought that this system should have originally chosen Jimmy, but there was some kind of glitch. But still, he understood that regardless of dimension, with such a cool entity as the Heavenly Tao, glitches could not arise. Well, in the end he said that he didn't need to think about it, he just needed to finish the villain's storyline and that's it. Ariel was surprised that her brother still refused her offer. Thus, he will actually duel with Jimmy, where he will be defeated. But this can hardly be changed, because at that ceremony for accepting students, Marcus changed his fate by defeating Jimmy with one blow. This could mean that if Marcus faces Jimmy in battle again, he will once again be able to rewrite his own destiny. Approaching Vanessa, Ariel said that she would love her just as much if she did not compete with her for her brother. And she also hopes that the day when they become enemies because of this will never come. Meanwhile, Jimmy was in an underground prison, worried that he was going to die. After all, he no longer sees the radiance before his eyes, even more, he does not see anything at all. The spirit replied that he shouldn't worry about it, it's better to treat his wounds, because during the battle with that girl, he received burns to his eyes. Jimmy understood that this was all because of Marcus, because he sent Vanessa to him to lure him into a trap. Now Jimmy will not rest until he repays him in full, and he will cut into pieces those who offended and humiliated him. Suddenly the spirit told him to stop his noise, because someone was coming, whose strength of spirit had almost reached deification. But he doubts that it is the chief elder of the punishment hall who has come to announce the decision. Raising his head, Jimmy noticed that most of the bars in the cell had scattered in different directions. It was Ashley, and with a frightening expression on her face, she said that Jimmy had finally fallen into her hands, after which she ordered Jimmy to tell her how he would like to die. The only thing Jimmy can do is beg for help from the spirit, because this woman can really kill him. If the spirit saves him now, then from now on Jimmy will obey him unquestioningly. Ashley was surprised that the chosen one of fate, which had excited the entire Qinglan school and then the middle continent, turned out to be such trash. After which she added that Jimmy should not worry so much, because his death would not be in vain. Jimmy recognized this technique. Ashley used the insidious and dark technique of the cultivators. Starting to choke Jimmy, she said that she would simply dry him dry. On top of that, Ashley mocked the memories of the Heavenly Tao. Was it really possible that Jimmy, whom she was about to kill, should have destroyed them? Is it possible that Jimmy, who has not yet had time to truly ascend, will die at the hands of this disgusting woman? Suddenly, a cloud of energy began to appear at Jimmy's throat. And a moment later, this scoundrel was no longer in the cell where Ashley was going to kill him. She, to tell the truth, did not expect that this brat would be able to escape after breaking through the multi-layered barriers of this prison. Ashley remembered from her memories that Jimmy had a mysterious and powerful patron behind him, which was the reason for his abnormal luck. But because she has only seen the future in general terms, she does not know what kind of person is behind Jimmy or what his origins are. She understood that if this continued like this, there could be bad consequences, so she needed to stop him as soon as possible. Ashley did not understand how she could stop Jimmy, because he was under the protection of an outstanding patron. In this competition, Jimmy will challenge Marcus. After Marcus is defeated, Jimmy's name will be heard throughout the school. And judging by her memories, initially Marcus was a boring and insignificant person, but during that ceremony he was able to rewrite his fate. Could this mean that Marcus is the key figure to change the whole situation? Meanwhile, Jimmy was escaping from prison, and the spirit said that in order for them to escape, he had to use up all his spiritual energy. And now all they need to do is get out of Qinglan school, and the further the better. After all, he is the chosen one of fate with incomparable luck, and leaving school, the number of his fateful opportunities will not decrease. When he reaches significant heights, he can return here again and destroy the Qinglan school with one blow. Isn't that what he wants? Suddenly Jimmy stopped and told the venerable spirit to be silent, because, as he said, Jimmy was the chosen one of fate. Only the spirit had just loudly declared that it had used up all its spiritual energy, in which case Jimmy was only interested in one thing. Where did he get this spiritual energy from? It turns out that when he overcame new limits, he each time appropriated part of the spiritual energy to himself. Following this, Jimmy asked that since they are interconnected, why does the spirit extol itself so highly? At that moment the spirit gave up and said that since he had chosen him, he should tell him everything so that later it would not turn out badly for him. The spirit said that Jimmy was right. He also wanted Jimmy to recognize him as his partner, and then asked what Jimmy plans to do next. Jimmy said he was going to file a complaint with the elders against Vanessa and Marcus for trying to frame Jimmy. The spirit said that there is a high probability that one of the elders is a spy of the 8 great dark sections who has infiltrated the ranks of supporters of the righteous path. He managed to fool the head of the school and the elders, but his essence was not hidden from the immortal eye of the spirit. The spirit said that Jimmy should stay away from him so as not to get into another unpleasant situation. But Jimmy said that since he is from the dark sects, it is simply wonderful, because he will be able to unite with him and destroy the entire Qinglan school. All he has to do is send a letter to his beautiful half-sister, and she will come with 800,000 selected soldiers, and together they will raze Qinglan school to the ground. Jimmy will force Marcus to watch with his own eyes as he slowly kills his master and sisters. The spirit was worried, because Jimmy did not see the difference between good and evil, whether this was the same Jimmy whom the spirit had known before. He began to think that this child could no longer be saved, so it was time to think about a backup plan. Therefore, he remembered Marcus as a person who also has an unusual destiny. And so, after some time, they reached a huge gate. This was the secret realm of the Sword Abode, where the school casts spiritual swords of fate for its students. From everything that was said by the spirit, Jimmy only understood that there were a lot of strong weapons here. The spirit said that it is not only strong, but it can also increase the strength of the cultivator who managed to get this sword. Jimmy doubted that now was the time to open the abode of the ball. Why then did the seal give way? After analyzing the cave, the spirit noticed an accumulation of mysterious energy inside, which, according to him, would affect Jimmy for the rest of his life. Jimmy was delighted, because just a second earlier he had been afraid of that woman, and now he was suddenly faced with an opportunity of such magnitude. He truly was the chosen one of fate. But the spirit stopped Jimmy and said that it was very dangerous there. With his current powers, it was like a one-way road, so he needed to become stronger. Jimmy said that the abode of the sword is always closed, but as soon as he came here, the seal weakened, which means an opportunity specially prepared for him. Despite the spirit's warning about the vileness of the insidious traps, they still went inside. Jimmy began to doubt whether the aura the spirit sensed was actually in front. The spirit replied that he could not be mistaken. Well, somehow the atmosphere of this cave is not suitable for the Qinglan school, which could not but confuse the spirit. Suddenly, the spirit stopped and, for no reason, suddenly looked in the other direction. Pointing his finger at one of the paths in the cave, the spirit said that this is where that mysterious energy comes from. Of course, upon hearing this, Jimmy, without looking back, immediately ran in the direction where the spirit pointed. The spirit wanted to warn Jimmy about something, but it was clear that Jimmy would not have listened to him anyway, and continued to run in that direction. It turned out that in that room there was a dark sword of the demonic abyss. Even the spirit was shocked. He did not understand how there could be demon weapons in the School of Immortals. Jimmy said that the name of the sword speaks for itself, so it would be perfect for him. The spirit said that he should not be touched, because some serious and ominous secret was hidden behind his presence. Jimmy asked the spirit if he really believed that he couldn't do it, or if he thought that the scoundrel who was stealing his life-changing opportunity could do it. The spirit said with despair that based on the current situation, perhaps this person could still do it. This made Jimmy very angry because since when would someone be able to do something like that and him not? Jimmy was very angry at the spirit's speech, so in a threatening tone he said that it was time for him to figure out who was boss. Therefore, today he will force the spirit to realize once and for all who the true chosen one of fate is here. Having pulled it out of the stone into the sword, it began to release a simply colossal amount of dark energy. Only at this moment a surprise awaited the spirit. It was energy from the upper world, but not demonic. Jimmy rejoiced, because this truly seemed like a great life-changing opportunity prepared especially for him. The moment when the situation will change radically is just around the corner, and he will be the one who achieves this. Suddenly, right in the middle of the energy emanating from his ball, he saw someone's silhouette. It turned out that it was Master Diana, the same teacher of Marcus. Jimmy began to get a little nervous, because he recognized her, and he also knew that she was a fairly strong cultivator. Meanwhile, an unsuspecting Marcus was at home, when suddenly his vessel cracked, which gave him a bad feeling. The power received from this sword turned Jimmy's head. He said that he would gain dominance over everything in this world thanks to it. Suddenly a girl appeared, whom the spirit immediately recognized. It was the wife of the creator of the Qinglan school named Karen. She said that as a sign of gratitude for the seal he destroyed, she was passing on to him the power of the heritage, the ancestors of the Qinglan school, in the hope that he will take full advantage of it in order to illuminate Qinglan with his greatness. Diana said that the fact that the Qinglan school had come to this point was entirely his fault. In response, Jimmy said that if they humbly obeyed him, he would help them protect the school, but if they refuse, he will kill them all here and now. It was not long before Jimmy entered the abode of the ball. The sword, which was mentioned in the memories of the heavenly Tao, really ended up here, but Diana did not understand who sealed Karen there and why. Well, be that as it may, since she will not allow everything to go according to Jimmy's wishes, because in the future this sword will be his main weapon. Trying to get him out, Diana said that this would be the end of his life. But in the end Diana failed to pull it out. It seems only a true child of fate can pull out this sword. Then all she has to do is put her second plan into execution. You need to lure Jimmy into the abode of the ball and rob him when he pulls out the dark sword, then all his efforts will turn into dust. Now the action takes place after the moment when Jimmy managed to pull out the sword. It turns out that Diana herself prepared a fateful opportunity for him. When did he manage to gain such favor on her part? With a grin on her face, Diana walked up to Jimmy and asked him about the favor he had just talked about. Jimmy understood perfectly well that with such a strong woman as a partner, they would be able to finish off Marcus in no time. Only just a moment later, Diana asked if he was worthy of this, and then she threw Jimmy into the ceiling, so much so that his head got stuck there. After which Diana said that he most likely does not know his place, because the only person who can draw her attention is Marcus. When Jimmy was already on his feet, Diana asked who he was. By that time, Jimmy was already filled with rage. He heard Marcus's name again, and even in such an unpleasant context for him. It is obvious to him that he is the chosen one of fate here, and also based on this, all the girls of Qinglan School should adore him. But he didn't understand why then everything that Jimmy wanted went to Marcus. The spirit suggested that Jimmy should run away quickly, because Diana was determined to kill him, in response to which the guy said that he was a child of fate and could not die so easily. Immediately after his words, Diana attacked him, at least a little, but fortunately for Jimmy, he managed to repel this attack. But even this did not help him much, since he still flew into the wall. And now, Diana is ready to deliver the final blow to kill Jimmy. Jimmy is in a panic and doesn't know what to do. He really doesn't want to die. But just as Diana was about to stab Jimmy, her sword was stopped by the electrical barrier around him, after which she was enveloped in the magic of this barrier, and Diana received a huge electric shock. Jimmy was once again convinced that he was truly a child of fate, and everyone who went against him would die at his hands. At that moment, the spirit told Jimmy to take advantage of Diana's defeat and run away as quickly as possible. Jimmy said that he was not going to run away, because what kind of a man would he be after this if he did not take revenge on her for such humiliation? He told her to give up. Besides, before he died, he would allow her to take care of him a little, so that she would not die in vain. Apparently, Jimmy's intentions were not pure, because immediately after this speech he reached out to Diana. Suddenly, the stone located under Diana's dress worked and began to release energy. The spirit warned Jimmy to be extremely careful because it was heavenly thunder that had been dissipated again. Right after the spirit told Jimmy to be careful, a piece of thunder was already right in front of his face. But fortunately for Jimmy, he managed to repel this attack, saying that even if Diana dared to kill him again, she still wouldn't succeed. Such petty attempts to kill him with heavenly thunder particles are not enough. A moment later, Diana was behind Jimmy. She said that now she was not going to kill him. But that doesn't mean she can't beat him up. Because she hated him and because of what Diana had to endure, she beat Jimmy as hard as she could. In this case, if Diana cannot kill him, she will do everything to make him forget about everything. What happened to him that day? After Diana gave Jimmy a good beating, she said that she now needed to call Karen. Hearing this, the spirit exhaled with relief. Because fortunately for him and Jimmy, Diana did not notice his presence. Only now, turning around, Diana said that she had almost forgotten about him. Then, with the help of her magic stone, she began to suck the spirit out of Jimmy's ring, after which she actually called Karen to report on the current situation with Jimmy. Karen already knew that their plan to lure and kill Jimmy in this cave had failed. Unfortunately for them, he is truly the chosen one of fate. It is amazing to what extent the heavenly Tao protects him. Diana agreed with Karen, and added that she was lucky that she had this pendant with her, which protected her from the thunder disaster. She said that Marcus gave this pendant to her when they were little, most likely he no longer remembers it. Karen replied that her sixth sense told her that heaven's will had changed, and the only one who could stop Jimmy was Marcus. Diana agreed with her, but before it comes to that, the two of them must pave a smooth path for him. Meanwhile, the action took place in the dormitory for high-ranking students at Phoenix Peak School. Marcus enjoyed being in the hot bath, thinking about how much he had drunk yesterday since he managed to pass out. He could not even imagine that his sister Ariel could handle ropes so skillfully. It was already beginning to get light, but Marcus's eyes were already drooping, so he decided to go to bed. Besides, he is a villain, so skipping morning class is in the order of things for him. Only suddenly Lou burst into his room with the words that Jimmy had just filed a complaint against him and Vanessa. The elders from the punishment hall have already arrived, so they should also hurry up. And so Lou became the second girl who saw Marcus naked, but the first time it was unusual for him, but now he is already familiar with it. He knew that when faced with uncertain situations, he had to act like a villain in order to recreate his character completely. Marcus asked her what she was trying to achieve by bursting into his room so brazenly. Did she really want her brother to teach her adult things? Lou said that she didn't quite understand her brother, what he meant. Did he really want to teach her something? After these words, Marcus realized that his younger sister was too innocent. If Ariel or Vanessa had been in her place, their faces would have already glowed with embarrassment. Marcus was amazed that she really didn't understand anything, so he recognized her as the purest and most innocent angel from the whole plot. He is so ashamed that in order to recreate the character, he had to say something so shameless and vulgar to her. After which Marcus told his sister to wait for him outside. He would immediately get dressed and go out. Lou did just that. Coming out of his room, Lou blushed. She said that Marcus had an amazing body, so she fantasized about a lot of vulgar things. After which she said that this time she will have to try, because the event called the Gathering of Five Bloodlines is her last chance. She needs to kill Jimmy and get her big brother no matter what. Meanwhile, Emily, who was sleeping in the dormitory, had a nightmare about Qinglan School. She dreamed of the Qinglan School burning in fire and surrounded by the corpses of students. Jimmy ordered Emily to leave this girl, because she is already dead, and now the most important thing is to save Master Diana and her students. Emily, with tears on her face and hatred for Jimmy, said that if only he had not hesitated on the road, by forever delaying their arrival at Qinglan School, this would not have happened. Even if only the four of them were left alive, they would fight to the last, and they would die standing their ground. Ultimately, Jimmy managed to save at least these four, after which he approached Lou and shook hands with her, saying that he was a little late. Seeing that at least these four survived, Emily was glad. Jimmy asked the sisters and the master to come over to his side so that together they could exact retribution for the Qinglan School. Only the master and the two remaining sisters were unfriendly towards Jimmy. He said someone's name in a whisper, and eventually Diana even began to shed tears from what was happening. After this scene, Emily still woke up with horror on her face and in a cold sweat. Before she had time to really wake up from such a terrible dream, she was already told that Jimmy had filed a complaint against her with her sister Lou from Phoenix Peak. Emily didn't feel right, but she still said that she needed a few minutes and she would be ready. She said that if all these memories were true, then there was no way she could let go of this scoundrel named Jimmy. Only Emily noticed that at the last moment Master Diana said someone's name, but she didn't know who the master was talking about. And so Lou and Marcus had already arrived in the vicinity of the Palace of the Highest Sky, where they were called to clarify the situation. Lou said that they should hurry, because she was afraid that Jimmy would decide to distort the facts about what happened. The Gathering of the Five Bloodlines is just around the corner. If Marcus knew that everything would turn out like this, he would not have asked Vanessa for help. Marcus's thoughts were interrupted by a girl who addressed him. It was Emily. She said that she had heard about his fame, so she had long wanted to meet him. Marcus was delighted. He would admire these legs for the rest of his life. Such a nonentity as Jimmy does not deserve them. This was a top-notch girl from Jimmy's harem in the main story, and he had to go out of his way to get her. Looking at Emily, Marcus thought that it was not without reason that they say that it is better to see once than to hear 100 times. Marcus was also called to this meeting. But did they also send Emily to meet him? Of course Marcus could be mistaken. Based on the feelings that Emily had for Jimmy, she wants to discuss with him a strategy for getting Jimmy out of this mess safely. But instead, Emily said that Jimmy is a lustful male who made his way to the sources of the Heavenly Maiden, and previously provoked Marcus. Together, as senior students, they must act together to achieve the most severe punishment for Jimmy, from which he will not recover. Marcus said that during the ceremony, some disagreements actually arose between them. However, he adheres to honesty and openness in his actions. Whether Jimmy is guilty or not must be decided in accordance with the laws of the school. Therefore, he asks Emily to abandon her intentions, so as not to lose even a drop of her fair and honest nature. Lou didn't understand, since when her brother became so fair towards Jimmy, was it really because of the presence of this Emily? Suddenly, Marcus grabbed Lou's hand and led her inside, saying that if this discussion continued, this scene would go even further beyond the plot. Emily did not expect that Marcus would actually be so firm and principled. It turned out that he was completely different from how she imagined him before they met. Upon entering, Marcus saw all four elders of the Qinglan School, after which he said that the eldest disciple of Phoenix Peak was greeting the professors and gentlemen elders. Suddenly, Marcus heard Jimmy's voice asking his master to get justice for him. Marcus was surprised that someone as big in the story as Jimmy would end up crying and begging for help from this mini-boss. In any case, now he needs to make sure that Jimmy can survive until the battle gathering of the Five Bloodlines, so that he can defeat him and Marcus can finally return home. Marcus also did not forget about playing to the public, behaving like a real villain, saying that with his current strength he would cut him with one blow. But it's strange that, having met his gaze, he did not see in his eyes such a fire inherent in the chosen one of fate as at the first meeting. The elder asked Marcus why Vanessa did not come, because she was invited, and did the student he sent not reach the recipient? But Vanessa couldn't lie at all, so Marcus had to make up a story about overexertion during training, which caused Vanessa to stay home. Well, in that case, the elder expects that, as the eldest disciple of the bloodline, Marcus will explain everything himself. The elder asked him if he was the one who instructed his sister to trick Jimmy into the source of the heavenly maiden yesterday. Now Marcus was faced with a difficult task. He needed to prove his innocence, and at the same time not lead to Jimmy's death. Derek told his student not to worry, because he knows thousands of ways to achieve the harshest punishment for Marcus. After all, his master managed to bribe a lot of people, both from the top and the bottom, so if no one stands up for Marcus today, he is doomed. Ashley said that since Vanessa did not come, she would take the liberty of representing her interests here. Marcus knew that Ashley and his master Diana did not get along. Who would have thought that she herself would decide to step forward and support him? At that time, Jimmy was simply bursting with anger, because just a little more, and today this guy would be doomed to death. Why is he so lucky? Is it possible that he is the same person who snatched Jimmy's life-changing opportunity that the spirit mentioned? Luckily for Marcus, Ashley is the head of one of the peaks, so she has the right to do this. Following which Ashley asked Marcus the same question as the elder, in response to which Marcus replied that that was exactly how it happened. After which Ashley asked what time period it was approximately. Marcus replied that with all the calculations, it was approximately between 1 and 3 in the morning. Hearing such an answer, Ashley began to get nervous, because if he confesses everything, then how can she cover for him? But Marcus said the following: he actually asked Vanessa to see Jimmy, and he also asked her to apologize to him on his behalf. Because on the day of the student acceptance ceremony, a conflict arose between them, and Marcus felt that apologizing would be the best option for both of them. His original plan was to use Vanessa as a mediator who could smooth out the hostility between them, but he never thought that things would turn out this way. At about 4 o'clock in the morning, Vanessa came to Marcus and said that she had carelessly missed Jimmy. She looked for him everywhere, but never found him. At this moment, Jimmy shouted that it was all a lie, because initially he used Vanessa to set him up, and everything he said was a lie. Hearing such defiant, impudent words from Jimmy, Ashley could not resist and in a commanding tone told him to shut his mouth, who even allowed him to interrupt her along with her student, right in the middle of the interrogation. After which she told Derek to keep an eye on his student, in response to which Derek apologized and asked to continue the interrogation. Ashley quickly turned her attention to Marcus. She asked him, after Vanessa missed Jimmy, if she had met anyone who could confirm this. In a whisper, Ashley said that even if she herself believed that he was right, how was he going to prove his statements to the elders present here? Marcus hesitated, as if he didn't know what to do next, but suddenly someone shouted out that he could confirm everything Marcus said. It was Emily who confidently stated that everything Marcus had just said was true. She said it was all true when she took Jimmy into custody after discovering that he had made his way to the source of the Celestial Maiden. Emily saw a student from Phoenix Peak named Vanessa asking other students if they had seen a certain young man, and now it seems to her that then she was looking for Jimmy, whom she missed at some point. Therefore, it is possible that Jimmy, who illegally entered the Forbidden Lands, was indeed a misunderstanding. In her mind, Emily said that Marcus was always the first to reveal Jimmy's falsehood, for which she respects him, which is why she is ready to cooperate with him. Kneeling before the elders, Jimmy said that this time, someone was really trying to set him up. Therefore, he hopes that the respected heads and elders will achieve justice for him in this disagreement. Marcus liked that Jimmy was willing to throw his pride aside and beg for things like this at times like this, but he was still too inexperienced with such things. And then Marcus said that he understood that he was now on edge from the fact that he had unfairly suffered from a disciple of Fengming Peak, and therefore did not choose expressions. However, due to his resentment, he cannot blame innocent people for anything, ignoring the facts. In response, Jimmy told him to rid him of his hypocrisy. Suddenly Derek covered Jimmy's mouth with his hand, saying that the circumstances were stronger than him, and after Emily acted as a witness, no one would believe him. He also told him not to worry, because he believes him, and one day he will certainly help him settle scores with these people. At first Jimmy didn't want to listen to him, but Derek insisted that Jimmy give in now. In the end, Derek thanked everyone present for coming here today and resolving this disagreement. Even though this incident was a misunderstanding, Jimmy's emotions were unleashed, and Jimmy unfairly blamed the Phoenix Peak senior student. So why hasn't he yet taken the initiative and shook his hand and apologized? Such words infuriated Jimmy very much, because he was the only victim here, and he also had to apologize to the real culprit. Through great hatred and clenching his teeth, he nevertheless asked him to apologize for his rashness. To his apology, Marcus replied that everything was fine, and given his sincerity, he, as a senior student, would leave this unpleasant situation behind. Also, in the future, he will try to pay more attention to his actions so that this never happens again. Suddenly, Diana appeared out of nowhere and counted that Jimmy wounded Marcus, after which she threw him several meters away with a powerful blow. Diana said that yesterday she had too much to drink, but today everything is fine, so she will not allow anyone to harm her senior student. Derek, as usual, supported Jimmy, saying that only yesterday he suffered from these idiots, and today he also received another beating. Only Marcus said that Diana misunderstood everything, because Jimmy now came up to him to shake his hand and make peace. In this case, Diana believes that everything is over here, so they leave. She returns Marcus back to the peak. And then, in front of everyone, Diana and Marcus teleported to the place they needed. This angered Marcus's sister, because as soon as the master arrived, in his eyes, Lou ceased to exist. After what they saw, the elders said that Diana was neglecting the laws more and more each time, so they should deal with this before the situation escalates into something more serious. But Ashley intervened in this conversation. She said that they could provide this opportunity to her, because it was precisely Marcus's natural abilities that she liked. And she knows better than anyone what kind of character Diana has, in response to which the elders said that this was a great idea, and then transferred this task to her. She understood that if she continued to remain inactive, Diana would kidnap Marcus from her, but Ashley did not intend to let the prey slip right from under her nose. Meanwhile, Diana transported her and Marcus to Phoenix Peak, to the mountain of the Heavenly Maiden. She said that since they returned to their place, he need not be afraid that someone will harm him. But Diana still felt that Marcus did not look completely happy. But Marcus said that he had only just begun to realize that the trouble was over, and had not yet had time to begin to rejoice. Only now Diana directly asked whether his dissatisfaction depended on the fact that she had overdone it today. Marcus couldn't find the right words to describe the current situation, so he said that this time Diana acted more or less. Diana confusedly asked what he meant. More or less, he needs to tell it like it is. She promises that she won't be angry about the truth. After which he shouted at Diana, saying that in this situation she really overdid it, because Jimmy had absolutely no evil intentions. Besides, she beat Jimmy right in front of everyone, so in the future, he hopes that she will not interfere in school affairs. Marcus was absolutely pleased. Finally, even such a petty villain as he could speak out. Only after all these bold statements towards Diana, Marcus stood in fear, expecting an incredibly powerful slap in the face. But instead of all this, opening his eyes, Marcus noticed that Diana had burst into tears. She said that throughout her life she had never cared about other people's opinions, but how could he treat her like that in such a situation? Today she just wanted to protect her student. Was it really such a big mistake? After which Diana said that she did not want to see him now, and he could go. Diana began to remember the words of Karen, who discussed Diana's student in her presence. When Diana asked him if he wanted to court her for the rest of his life, she revealed her true feelings at that moment, but she was annoyed because he never answered. Diana finally began to understand that the fate between them comes down solely to the relationship between teacher and student, so she needs to stop creating illusions. But at that moment, unexpectedly for Diana, Marcus came up and hugged her without any words. At that moment, the whole plot and these villainous systems were unimportant to him, because the kindness of his teacher was limitless. What kind of person will he be then if he cannot repay her for her kindness? How will he then differ from a worthless parasite? Marcus took Diana by the shoulder and said that she asked him a question that day, and now he was ready to answer it for her. He said that he was ready to be with her all his life, right up to the very moment he leaves this world. Hearing this, Diana immediately stopped listening to him fully, because an incredibly bright smile appeared on her face, and she herself was beaming with joy. Marcus was embarrassed, because it turns out that his master has such a beautiful smile. After which he said that until he leaves this world, he will never allow her tears again. After some time, they found themselves in the Mountain Lotus Monastery, a cozy place located behind a waterfall. Over alcohol, Diana told Marcus that she had an important matter for her that they needed to discuss together. She wanted to talk about collecting the 5 bloodlines, and how to win a decisive victory in it, and become famous throughout the eastern region. And then again Marcus realized that this woman had again taken up the task of changing the original plot. Diana asked Marcus if he would like to achieve true power, in response to which Marcus answered her very quickly and briefly, saying that he did not want it, justifying this by the fact that his talents are mediocre, therefore he would like to spend the rest of his days in peace. And in response, Diana also indifferently replied that she understood his point of view, but she was deeply shocked that he thought that way about himself. However, what if she told him that she had a way for him to transform in power, and also get the opportunity to spend much more time in the company of the master and his sisters? Knowing that Diana was the reincarnation of the lunar sword goddess from the upper world, who could truly make him stronger, he suggested that we discuss this another time. Only Diana was determined to hear Marcus's answers, so she told him not to shy away from her questions. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Marcus pulled out one interesting thing. it was one of the 10 great and rarest drinks, a wine called Flower Reflection. It would be an honor for him, as a student, if Master Diana allows him to taste the taste of this drink in her company. Grabbing the vessel as if it were her own, Diana said that the effort she had put into Marcus over the years had not been in vain. Well, Marcus was very glad that he had such a useful thing at hand. Thanks to it, the disaster was over. And now we are shown a moment from the original plot, where Marcus, while collecting 5 bloodlines, fought with Jimmy. Judging by Marcus, it was clear that this battle was not easy for him, because he was already quite exhausted. But Jimmy didn't care, he only incited Marcus to finally give up, because in any case he would not defeat him. Suddenly, Marcus decided to use one interesting item, which caused a strong reaction from his master. Diana was disappointed that Marcus dared to steal an artifact called the Black Lotus of the Higher Sky, which greatly disappointed her. Marcus, with pronounced self-doubt, tried to justify himself by saying that Jimmy could not be trusted. In response, Jimmy said that they all really need to trust Marcus, who stole and decided to use such a powerful artifact against him. Master Diana did not listen to these stupid excuses from Marcus, so she ordered the guards to take him under arrest to rethink Cliff. The key condition for Marcus's pardon was that Jimmy be given the aspirations of the sword. When Diana came to visit her delinquent student, she wondered whether he had time to properly reflect on his actions. But she was shocked that instead of improving, Marcus simply committed suicide. At that moment, Diana felt simply disgusting, because she felt guilty for it. Therefore, she wanted to say that this time she would definitely protect Marcus. Only now, without even having time to finish such serious words, she fell asleep from intoxication. Marcus is lucky that the master is an incorrigible alcoholic. As soon as he gives her a drink, she will completely forget about everything else. Since he has already gotten the master drunk, he needs to play pranks, otherwise he will undermine his title as a villain. Marcus already had an artifact with him that would lead him to certain death. He did not think that getting it would be so easy. There was something else that Marcus had been wanting to try for a long time, so he shouldn't miss this opportunity to have fun. Marcus didn't think about any vulgarities, all this time he just wanted to pull his mentor's cheeks. It even seemed a little cute to him. But after Marcus had had enough of playing with the master's cheeks, kissing her, he wished her sweet dreams. After some time, Diana finally woke up, surprisingly remembering everything that happened to her. Diana just confusedly did not understand how Marcus could be so experienced. Karen decided to visit Diana, and the first thing she said was that her assumptions turned out to be accurate. Her unlucky student really stole that artifact. At the same time, Karen herself brought good news for Diana, because she completely eliminated the ominous dark energy contained in the Black Lotus of the sky. Now he has been reborn as a true heaven-rank artifact called the Underground Sky Blue Lotus. Now her student can safely use it without any risks. After which Karen asked Diana whether her consciousness possessed the predictive patterns left by the heavenly Tao, or turned her body into a sword. She managed to pass through the spatial time stream. Thus, she was able to catch a glimpse of some of the events that would happen in the future. Diana said that was the whole point. If she only saw a glimpse of it, it wouldn't be enough. She said that Karen had previously mentioned that Jimmy was Destiny's chosen one. Does that mean they need to squeeze that blessing out of him first? Karen confirmed her words, but a positive change appeared in front of them, so they don't have to worry so much. When her disciple entered here, she felt in him a grain of golden blessing from the upper world. That's why she believes. Before she could finish speaking, Diana interrupted her, asking if her student, like Jimmy, was the chosen one of fate. In response, Karen said that this is not so. Marcus is an ordinary person, but thanks to her efforts, he not only changes the direction of the wheel of his destiny, but he also gained the opportunity to confront the chosen one of fate, as well as to fight back. It was little Lu's training that took place in the Sacred Beast Reserve. Her trainer was telling her to activate her spell. 8-year-old little Lu had to tame this seemingly ferocious and wild wolf. In tears, Lu was eventually able to speak the words to activate her command spell. But as soon as the ferocious wolf began to show aggression and get closer to Lu, out of fear, she could not even stay on her feet and fell to the ground in horror, interrupting her words to activate the spell of submission. But at the most opportune moment, Marcus came to Lu's aid and defeated this wolf with one blow. After which, with a malicious face, Marcus was surprised that his sister was so useless, so she needs to take an example from him and learn how it is really done. After all, now she is not in a position to fight such a strong beast, so she needs to retreat, otherwise this will not end well for her. The trainer confirmed Marcus's words and said that she has the courage of a hare. She does not have any inclinations to become an animal mentor. Lu, in tears, begged to continue training her, because she must kill the beast that, when she was very little, killed her parents. One night, when Lu was sleeping, she woke up hearing some noise on the street. Deciding to go out into the dark night and see what happened right next to her house, she discovered the same dead, magical beast that killed her parents. She didn't understand whether she should be happy or sad, because on the one hand the beast was already dead, but on the other she wanted to kill him with her own hands. But the only thing that was clear was that Marcus, despite his image as a villain, still cares about his own sisters and helps them. She was weak back then, but now, thanks to her brother, she is able to subdue animals of such a high level. When suddenly, someone grabbed Lu's waist from behind, she immediately recognized that it was her brother Marcus. Marcus said that it was dishonest, and then asked how she managed to guess that it was him. Lu replied that this was all because she knew her brother's smell very well. In his heart, Marcus was glad that this is exactly what his younger sister is, and not like the last time, when she came to the threshold of the school with an armada of animals behind her. Suddenly Lu remembered that she had a special gift prepared for Marcus, after which she immediately pulled Marcus along with her somewhere. Without saying where they were going, they walked for quite a long time. Marcus was even a little tired. But having decided to ask how long they still had to go, Lu replied that they were there and her brother needed to look at the sky as soon as possible. Looking up at the sky, Marcus was amazed by the beauty of these 7 colored fire phoenixes. In all the lands imaginable, these phoenixes are the rarest ancient, spiritual beasts. The sister, with an incredibly joyful smile on her face, asked Marcus if he liked her gift. Only Marcus didn't understand why she decided to give him such a gift, so Lu reminded him of what he once said. What he likes most are the most valuable and hard to get things in the world, which is why she thought of these 7 colored fire phoenixes. Lu still wasn't entirely sure that this was exactly what he wanted, but they are still quite rare. But in fact, when Marcus said this, he meant his desire to return to Earth and reunite with his family. He could not even imagine that for so many years she would continue to think about these words he casually said. Marcus abruptly fell silent, which surprised Lu quite greatly. She was worried that in this way her brother was expressing his dissatisfaction with her gift. Lu began to apologize to Marcus for not thinking about the fact that he didn't like animal mentoring, so he shouldn't like her gift. A moment later, Marcus hugged Lu, telling her not to say such nonsense, because he couldn't help but like such a wonderful gift. Marcus thanked her for such a carefully prepared and wonderful gift for him. Taking this as an admission, Lu threw her full weight on Marcus, causing them to begin to fall backwards. A moment later they were both lying on the ground, only Marcus fell to the ground and Lu fell on top of him. Without thinking twice, Lu chose the strategy of acting first and kissed Marcus. Marcus said that he gives her credit, she knows how to work well with the tongue, but she is far from him, but finally he will get down to business. In response, Lu just laughed, because Marcus always says that, isn't he tired of these funny speeches? Only in the original, Marcus is a stereotypical character whose role is only to provoke hatred towards himself. But it didn't matter to her at all, because Lu would always like Marcus. Suddenly, Marcus's attention fell on the beautiful sky, in which 7 colored fiery phoenixes were flying, and in the sky itself there were seemingly shooting stars. These stars were flying towards one of the mountains not far from them. As soon as these stars reached the mountain, a powerful explosion occurred there, which was visible many kilometers away. Lu decided to ask Marcus if this was the case of the mountain where the 6 Qinglan saints live. Before this explosion, events moved to the highest peak of the Qinglan school, Mount Taizong, where at that time was the holy sword of the Qinglan school of immortals, a perfect lord named Silas. His servants said that the heavenly Tao had not responded to their prayers and the activation of the 7 stars prayer form had completely failed. Silas replied that there was nothing wrong with this, it means that this is the will of heaven, because such actions are characteristic of fate. The battle gathering of the 5 bloodlines will begin very soon. The one who wins it will be called by his subordinates to talk with Silas on Mount Taizong. He will give him the innermost secret of the ceremonial sword so that he can help them resist the threat of the dark sex, because its life is already coming to an end. Finally, Silas decided to ask a question regarding Diana. He asked if his subjects knew if she had gone on trips, as in previous times. One of the servants said that there was no need to worry about her, because she was now fully occupied with mentoring her own student. After this, Silas gave them a task for the future. He said that when he leaves this world, and the demons sealed deep underground will break his shackles, they will have to obey the head of the Phoenix Peak, Diana, in everything, and unquestioningly carry out all her orders. After all, this talent, sent to them by heaven itself, is their main trump card. Marcus remembered that this strange phenomenon was called the 7-star prayer formation. He almost forgot about this episode. In the original plot, a general gathering of elders was held in order to gather strength and transfer it to Silas so that he could continue to exist. After all, in the entire school he is the only person who can, with great difficulty, keep the reincarnation of the lunar sword goddess Diana in check. One of the reasons he died early was because of the annual expenditure of life force to subdue the big boss sealed in the forbidden lands of the school. Marcus did not even expect that with such large deviations from the plot, this episode would remain completely unchanged. If everything goes according to the plot, then after the victory, Silas will invite Jimmy to the abyss of Panlong where the demon is sealed. There they will find Jimmy's ceremonial dream. Only now did it dawn on Marcus that the system had relatively recently handed him this ceremonial sword, which meant irreversible destruction for the school. Seeing Marcus's condition, Lou decided to ask why he looked so worried. But without waiting for an answer, she said that he should not worry about anything, because she would always be by his side and would protect him in any situation. Only now Marcus understood that in fact only he was capable of attacking all the demons that would soon break out, so he said that he would also protect her. At this time, Jimmy was at home and healing his wounds after meeting with Diana, saying that at the next meeting he would definitely tear her to pieces. Suddenly, a spirit spoke to Jimmy, which frightened him. The spirit said that before Jimmy climbed these mountains, he advised him to leave. If he had listened to his advice that time and bypassed the school with Qinglan, the great blessing would still have nourished him. Has he still not noticed that all the girls he met at school are only thinking about killing him? But Marcus, on the contrary, defended him in court. Jimmy said that he had had enough, it was too late to back down. But why would the spirit talk about such things? He probably just wants to laugh at Jimmy. The spirit replied that he knew perfectly well what he was thinking about, so let him not even try to test the waters under him. But so be it, he will show his generosity one last time and help him achieve primacy at the battle gathering of the 5 bloodlines. Jimmy was glad that the spirit still found a way to. Before he could finish speaking, someone knocked on Jimmy's door. At that moment, the spirit returned back to the ring, saying that due to Jimmy's behavior, in most cases he would now have to rely only on himself. Jimmy didn't understand what was happening. Had he really abandoned him? Jimmy began to make excuses that he realized his mistake, which would never happen again. Afterwards he said that he is in this world only in the form of a spirit, which means someone harmed him, but when Jimmy becomes stronger, he will definitely repay him. The spirit replied that he promised him every time to obey him, while each time behaving even worse after that, so how could he trust Jimmy now? Jimmy tearfully began to beg him to forgive him, because this time he really realized his guilt and wrong. Only he here is able to heal the wounds, and then trample Marcus into the ground at the battle training camp. Having achieved retribution, Jimmy will leave the school at that very hour, as the spirit wanted. Jimmy just wants to know whether the spirit can cope with such severe wounds, and somehow find a way to fulfill his deepest desire for revenge. It turned out that behind the door was Derek, who was so worried about his student that he decided to check on him himself. He said that Jimmy suffered so much only because of him, because at the moment when Jimmy needed help, he was useless. Jimmy replied that since this happened, then everything was the will of fate. Derek replied that the wiser he behaves, the more his heart hurts for Jimmy. The guy was categorically and decisively, so he immediately asked Derek what brought him to him. Saying that he was very insightful, Derek shared with him his crazy plan, for the implementation of which he would need the help of Jimmy's sister. He will need his sister's entire army, consisting of 800,000 selected warriors. After hearing this, Jimmy became even more tense. He did not understand how he knew that he had a sister, who he even was. Well, now Jimmy should heal his wounds, and they will talk about this plan a little later. He will also soon ask the Elixir Pavilion manager to provide Jimmy with medicine for his wounds. But before leaving, Jimmy said that he wanted him to fulfill just one request, and then he would not remain in debt. He wished that he would allow him to take part in collecting the 5 bloodlines from Tiandan Peak. In response, Derek asked Jimmy about his wounds, but he confidently replied that it was not something to worry about. He needs a maximum of half a month, during which time he will not only recover, but will also achieve a rapid increase in his hardening. Derek was thinking that he was, after all, the son of the Grand Duke, so he quite possibly had some kind of trump card hidden up his sleeve. In response, Derek said that the problem is not that he does not trust him, he has already simply invited an honorary student of their peak for this battle. Jimmy replied that in this case he shouldn't even worry about such a trifle. After all, in half a month he will ask to organize a meeting for him with this student, after which they will fight for the right to take part in the collection of 5 genealogies. At that time, it was already the second sister who asked Marcus not to take part in the collection of 5 family trees. The first was Ariel, and now Lou too. Only in previous congresses he, like a cowardly turtle, hid his head, so why are they all so sure that this time he will take part? Out of nowhere, the system again gave Marcus a bunch of improvements, which again infuriated Marcus. From that moment on, Marcus said that he would not allow this system to spin him as it pleased. To do this, Marcus came to a valuable place of natural accumulation of spiritual energy, to the mountain monastery of Hanlin, where he is going to lead the life of a recluse for some time and see how the system will react to the fact that nothing can oppose him. After all Marcus was going to do here was sleep, look through the memory stone, and also laze around. After 10 days, Marcus was already going crazy because, even in a cave, he was still able to increase the level of his abilities. But while he was complaining to himself, Chris visited him, which Marcus was not happy about. After all, if he remembers correctly, then he said that no one should bother him while he was interrupting in the seclusion. But Chris replied that this was an important meeting on the occasion of the battle gathering of the 5 bloodlines, and that candidates would be selected to participate today. Marcus was glad that it had already come to this episode. According to the original timeline, it was at this meeting that he would receive a letter challenging him to fight from Jimmy. But the only difference is that now he will not fight for Feng Ming Peak, instead he will fight for Derek's bloodline. Marcus asked Chris if the candidates and main representatives from the remaining picks had already been decided. Chris replied that Scarlet Cloud Peak and Longzhou Peak, like last time, put out their senior students Brian and Michael. After hearing the possible candidates from the 2 peaks, he still decided to ask again regarding the Longzhou Peak whether they were really going to send Michael. Marcus asked again for a reason, because it shouldn't be like this. According to the original plot at this battle training camp, Longzhou Peak must exhibit its secret weapon. This is the eldest disciple of Longzhou Peak of the previous generation. From birth, with the heart of an enlightened swordsman and unimaginable talent, a man in whom his master dotes. According to the original development of events, this guy, on his way to the final meeting with Jimmy, defeated even Vanessa in battle. And no matter how strange it was in this battle, Jimmy won a clear victory, gaining the attention of all the beauties from that moment on. Chris asked in surprise whether Marcus had forgotten that the strongest student among the young generation of Longzhou Peak had always been and remains Michael. Marcus said that it was not that important, and then asked who would compete for Fengming Peak and Tiandan Peak. Chris replied that Emily would fight for Famen Peak. Well, the Tiandan Peak will be represented by Jimmy, who has reached the Golden Elixir stage, as well as the winning potential candidate for the performance of the same peak. Marcus was very happy about this. He knew that the old man in the ring would help Jimmy achieve good results. After which he took Chris, and they went to the meeting together, because if they were late, Diana would be unhappy. Out of the blue, Marcus decided to give Chris a low-ranking tempering stage floating sword and a spirit stone. Chris said that she really appreciates such gifts from Marcus, but she also believes that she does not deserve it, so she is forced to refuse it. But Marcus told her to stop pretending, because her look speaks for itself. Besides, he had one request for her that he really wanted her to promise to fulfill. He said that no matter what happens at the battle training, she should not interfere, and this also applies to the completion of this event. Indeed, in the original, after Marcus loses to Jimmy, everyone turns away from him, and he commits suicide. After the death of Marcus, Chris, not caring about all the risks, decides to make a desperate attempt at revenge on Jimmy. But of course, due to the huge difference in strength, Chris comes out of the fight half dead. It's unfortunate that Chris didn't realize until her death that the original Marcus saw her as nothing more than a handy tool. Despite the fact that he used to say that he doesn't care what happens after he leaves this world, he is trying to make sure that the fate of this person changes. Marcus briefly said that unfortunately for Chris, she had only been able to reach the foundation level in her entire life, so it would be better for her to find a quiet place. In tears, Chris said that everything that Marcus just said, she already knew. All the people of Phoenix Peak always looked at her with disdain. And once Marcus agreed to talk to her and try to make her succeed, it was a kindness she would never dare forget. After the battle gathering of the 5 bloodlines, she promised that she would leave the Qinglan school and willingly live the life of a commoner. In response, Marcus said that nothing can compare with a household, a wife, children, as well as simple human joy and a quiet life. After this conversation, Chris said that Marcus is the most generous and worthy person in this world. Therefore, for his sake, she will not regret it and will without a doubt give her life if necessary. The next action takes place at the foot of the Rock of the Heavenly Maiden, in Tai Square. Marcus walked through the main square with a serious expression on his face, where he was greeted by the rest of the school's students. Everyone said that his graceful manners matched that of an honorary disciple of Phoenix Peak. Everyone had a feeling that now Marcus was not the same as before. Of course, he is not like that, because even in that cave the system endowed him with even greater power than before. When suddenly Marcus heard someone calling him, lowering his head a little lower, he realized that it was his sisters, who said that they really missed their beloved brother. Marcus was a little uncomfortable, because due to the fact that they stood very close to him and pressed their chests on him, he could not breathe normally. Suddenly they asked him a treacherous question: had he really already reached the level of the Golden Elixir? After all, for more than 10 years he was only one step away from the initial level of pre-heaven. How did it happen that he is now? Marcus realized that they suspected something, so he became a little wary. Did they really think that he could be looked down upon? But what would they say when he reached such a high level? Now everything became clear to them. Marcus did not spare himself and trained for the purpose of protecting them all. They understood that he had reached the golden elixir stage in just 10 days. It must have been incredibly difficult. But so that they don't worry, he behaves as if this is just some kind of trifle, and nothing more. Only Marcus knew the truth, and it was that all this time he did nothing, just slept and stuff like that. Suddenly, Marcus was interrupted by the unexpected appearance of Master Diana. All this time, for the Battle of the Five Bloodlines, Diana very simply chose the participants from her peak, so she is going to choose them right now. Her gaze was just falling on Ariel, Vanessa and Marcus, but she didn't quite understand where Lou was now, and why she wasn't present here. But Diana's assistant said that she didn't have to worry about it, she just asked her to take the day off, but in any case, Lou was ready to fight. In this case, Diana said that the Phoenix Peak would be represented by Ariel, Vanessa and Lou. Only one thing did not give Diana peace. She looked at Marcus, who was surrounded by his sisters, and Diana was filled with concern. They, of course, are also her students, and gifted ones at that, and she, as a master, should be happy for such an excellent relationship between Marcus and them. But still, Diana admitted that, looking at this, it began to anger her. Suddenly, someone turned to Diana while in the air, flying on his Zanpakuto. This man said that he had come on behalf of the newly elected honorary disciple of Tiandan Peak, named Jimmy, in order to give an honorary student of the Peak of the Phoenix, named Marcus, a letter challenging him to a duel. Diana noticed that everything was as it was in that scenario. This guy also flew in and announced that Jimmy was going to challenge Marcus. Marcus was pleased, because the plot episode was successfully recreated, and Jimmy really did not disappoint him. Never before had there been such an ideal start to a story-driven social story as now, which couldn't help but please Marcus. Suddenly, after the words he said, the system notified him that he had received a large set of experience in cultivation and now the system would use it on Marcus. But the second message did not make Marcus happy, because now, because of this experience, he had reached the limit of the golden elixir stage, which again increased his strength. The people around were surprised, because Jimmy had only recently lost to Marcus in the selection of students, and now he was challenging him again. They thought it was stupid and arrogant. Marcus was now wondering what this guy would do now, despite such a mountain of criticism in their direction. Marcus patted the guy on the shoulder and asked how he could get to this point, because he just gave way for Jimmy to fight. And now he even dared to appear at his peak and arrange provocations here, his honor really unknown to him. But he only replied that he was not going to answer his stupid question, thereby becoming like trash like him, and besides, he would not defeat Jimmy. After which he went to Master Diana, saying that this time he came here to give Marcus a letter challenging him to a duel instead of Jimmy. Marcus said that he didn't understand why he was even bothering his master when he could just deliver the letter to the intended recipient, which was Marcus. But the sisters immediately began to persuade him not to accept this challenge, because even if they did not accept it, nothing would happen. Marcus just wanted them to stay out of all this and not make a mess here. He just needed to do everything according to the plot. Suddenly Diana told Ariel and Vanessa to move away from Marcus, because she was accepting this letter challenging him to fight personally. Her student has no equal in this world, so why should he accept the challenge of such a nonentity as Jimmy? She asked Jimmy to be informed that the honorary disciple of Phoenix Peak would once again crush him and make him beg for mercy. The guy was clearly nervous, but said that all his words would certainly reach the addressee. At that moment, Mark said that Diana was his only master and he loved her very much. Vanessa asked the master not to do this, but Ariel said that she could not force the master to renege on his words. Hearing such words from her student, Diana asked if she was trying to show her disobedience in this way. But the sisters said that they would never dare to do this. They were only worried about their brother, and wanted to take on this challenge themselves. Immediately after this, Marcus asked the sisters what they were doing now. Jimmy publicly provoked him into a duel and he, as an honorary student in the Peak of the Phoenix, must put all his strength into this battle. If he behaves like this, then what will happen to the centuries-old reputation of Phoenix Peak, as well as the authority of the master? Marcus publicly stated that a warrior should not run away from battle. Ariel said that Marcus really made the same choice as in the memories and intends to fight Jimmy to the last. Looking at him, Vanessa didn't understand how anyone could not love him, and Diana said that her student's determination was amazing. She really was not mistaken in her choice. In addition, Diana shouted that she intended to help Marcus crush Jimmy once and for all, so he could completely rely on her. Diana said that everyone could leave, because the mobilization meeting was over at this point. Vanessa and Ariel said that they would certainly support him during the battle. Marcus mentally said that in any case, no matter what he did, the system would still shower him with rewards, so he was already used to it. When suddenly the system gave him some kind of weapon that he had never even heard of before, it was a three-pronged spear of night thirst. It's not like he hasn't even heard of it. He didn't even know if the item actually existed. In addition, the additional effectiveness of this artifact is sharpened against enemies of the opposite sex, and he does not particularly communicate with any of the girls. Is the system really encouraging him to use this artifact against his own sisters? Diana told Marcus that the battle was just around the corner, so there was no time to relax. It was time for her to convey something significant to him. Marcus hoped that it would not be washing his feet like last time. Therefore, they will not waste a minute and return to the Mountain Lotus abode. At this moment, the only thing that embarrassed the sisters was that their brother and the master were holding hands. Calling on her bird of heaven, Diana said that it would take a long time to get there on the floating ball, and time was rushing, so she would throw it up. Diana told him to hold on tight, which made Marcus feel as if he were a young lover supported by a wealthy lady. From that moment on, the sisters were sure that they certainly needed to achieve the same strength as the master, because this was the only way they could conquer their brother. After some time, Diana took Marcus to a certain place. As Marcus watched Diana sit down on the swing, he was still surprised that she had left it at all. In response, Diana said that, of course, she left them, because he made them for her with his own hands. Several years ago, when Diana was still traveling around the world, and at the same time replacing water with alcohol, one day, leaving the cave, she discovered a real swing on the mountain.